List couldn't help but feel a sense of respect every time he saw her. Sometimes he thought like an animal. He was the only master in the castle, so he could do whatever he wanted. Why not pounce on him? However, he still calmed his restlessness and turned this impulse into motivation to cultivate his Douqi. Flame Dragon Drill and Waves of Flames had already been deeply memorized. Every move was executed without pause. He also gradually became familiar with multiple arrow, and he was already at masterful mastery of dual arrow. He was not far from masterful mastery of triple arrow either. He was still a bit away from mastering multiple arrow, but he was close to mastering ultimate level multiple phantom arrow. When I finish mastering multiple phantom arrow, it will be the moment when multiple arrow completely surpasses Marcus. List held the bow and arrow in his hand, his eyes sharp, staring at the target 100 meters away. His left hand held 3 arrows, and his mouth held 3 arrows. Wind speed, humidity, gravity, acceleration, Douqi adhesion, calculation complete, shoot. The wind whistled. The 3 arrows were like 3 rays of light side by side. His hands didn't stop moving. He plucked the 3 arrows from his mouth, put them on the bowstring, and shot. The 6 arrows followed one another. Because of their different speeds, they quickly intertwined and completed a complex collision. They all turned and changed their flying angles. Then, the 6 arrows seemed to hit the center of the target at the same time. Steadily, the arrowheads disappeared. I didn't miss the target. List was startled, and then became ecstatic. I didn't miss the target. I completed multiple phantom arrow. My archery has already surpassed Marcus. I, List Tulip, have already ascended to the position of divine archer. After the pleasant surprise, he felt a sense of defeat. In the Flower Town, his fighting strength was at another level. He was an extraordinary Earth Knight. Even in the entire Coral Island, he was among the top 10 knight. I am afraid that Levis is no longer my opponent. He is just a pampered elite Earth Knight. Although I have never been on the battlefield, but my archery is superior. Divine Archer meant that his fighting strength was far superior to that of an ordinary knight. However, considering that Levis was gaining experience on the battlefield, he decided to use Marcus as a comparison. An elite Earth Knight like Marcus represented the vast majority of knights who couldn't afford to take drugs. The only way they could improve their fighting strength was by constantly polishing their fighting skills. My total amount of chi has already surpassed Marcus by a large margin. My archery has also surpassed his. I still have the red blood sword to increase the power of the chi secret manual. He pulled out the red blood sword with a clang. List looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle and whispered, "I want to fight 10 of such Marcus." Marcus was still on Black Horse Island and could not fight with List, but there were still 2 Earth Knights in Flower Town, Rondo Kettle and Russell Steele. "You will train with me in actual combat. Rondo will go first." "Yes, Lord Baron," Rondo answered seriously. He was older than List, so he was not very nervous. On the contrary, he looked a little relaxed. After all, in everyone's impression, List had only broken through to the Earth Knight level for more than half a year. Although he was relying on Trembling Woods to show off his might, his own combat power was probably limited. Even if he was riding on a divine horse, there was nothing to fear. "Are you ready, Rondo?" "Lord Baron, I can start any time." "Then, Russell, you are in charge of the referee." "Yes, Lord Baron, Rondo, please listen to my command," Russell said loudly. "In the name of the knight's glory, get ready, start." With a command, List and Rondo, who were 100 meters apart, each drove their mounts and began to charge. At this moment, Rondo was relaxed. He had a lot of actual combat experience. List, on the opposite side, was a little nervous. After all, it was his first actual combat exercise, and his body was a little tense. He took a deep breath. He waved the knight's spear, and when the 2 sides were about to pass each other, he stabbed fiercely, fired Dragon Sweep. Bang! The knight's spear burst into flames, and his moves were fierce, colliding with Rondo's knight's spear. Then the flames dissipated, and the 2 spears were swung away. Rondo's body shook a little on the horse's back and soon stabilized. List did not shake his body, but his hand holding the knight's spear was almost twisted by the recoil. Because he was nervous, he did not control his strength well, and half of the recoil came from his own strength. I made a mistake. His heart was clear. Although he was annoyed by this low-level mistake, his nervousness dissipated a lot. Rondo's strength is much weaker than I thought, or rather, my strength is far beyond his. An elite Earth Knight against an ordinary Earth Knight should have a crushing momentum. He figured this out. He no longer had any nervousness, and suddenly shouted, "Again!" They had no choice but to respect him. I'm stronger than I thought. I've always underestimated myself. He was delighted. On the surface, List did not show it. The soul of an adult knew how to restrain his emotions. He just said lightly, "Since leaving the Knight Academy, I have not had actual combat training with anyone. We did not show all our strength in the battle just now. This time, you two come together, let's train again." "Yes, Lord Baron." The two responded in unison. Then a battle of 1 against 2 began, and the double attack hit. List was also flustered at first, but the gap in strength was too obvious. After 2 rounds of charging, he adapted to the double attack. A steel knight spear waved flames all over the sky. Clang! Clang! After 2 blows, Randy and Russell each flew again and fell heavily to the ground. The 2 of them were not enough to pose a threat to List. After the 2 got up, List did not show the joy of victory. He still had the usual standard aristocratic smile. "That's all for today's training. You have just arrived in Flower Town and don't have enough team members to practice together. For the time being, polish your fighting spirit. If you want to go to the battlefield, there is indeed a gap in your level." Both of them more or less had the heart to pick up beans. They felt that Flower Town was short of people. If they joined early, they could follow and pick up the credit. But today's training made them realize that if they were not strong enough, they would not get a good result no matter where they went. Putting away the frivolity in his heart, he solemnly responded, "Yes, Lord Baron." They had not yet chosen their allegiance, and, similarly, List had not accepted them. Whether they could establish a master-follower relationship in the future depended on their performance. Judging from their current performance, List really looked down on them. Of course, he did not directly deny the 2. He intended to wait for Marcus to come back and fight with Marcus to see how strong he was. Marcus's combat effectiveness had clearly reached the level of Coral Island's elite knight. The Count had assigned him to guard List and serve as List's tutor because of this. Therefore, Marcus could be used as a yardstick. Everyone dispersed. They returned. This was a battle. It may not be too enjoyable, but the process was hearty. After taking a bath, List leaned back in the living room chair, recalling the details of the battle and thinking about where to improve. Good at summarizing can better find out their own shortcomings, improve, and make progress. When recalling, he may be a little distracted. The smoke mission quietly emerged and quickly attracted List's attention. Mission completed. Reward a corn-grass spriteworm. There was no surprise reward, no surprise corn-grass spriteworm. It seems that the work of cultivating 100 acres of corn-grass has been completed. Very good. Corn-grass spriteworm, my 10th spriteworm. No, it's the 9th spriteworm. The thorn spriteworm has evolved into a thorn's lesser sprite. He waved his hand. A new smoke mission had been issued. Mission: haven't you eaten enough barbecue and seafood? As a noble lord, the diet must be nutritious. How can there be no chicken, fish, and eggs? This year's grain harvest, please raise more than 1,000 chickens in Flower Town to provide enough eggs and chicken. Reward: special mineral load. Special mineral load? List was pleasantly surprised. The reward is a mineral load. The last reward was a super small saltpeter mine, and this time it is a special mineral load. I don't know what kind of mineral load it is. By the way, is it related to the basalt pillars? He could think that the main body of Black Horse Island composed of basalt pillars was probably related to the mineral load. Perhaps the special mineral load was buried in these basalt pillars. Whatever it is. Chapter 205. With magic eyes, as long as a sprite worm was born, List could not escape his eyes. The corngrass sprite worm also did not escape his observation. At the edge of the cornfield, there was an inconspicuous corngrass with faint traces of magic power on its ears. "I've finally found you. Grow up quickly and work for me." After List confirmed it, he immediately summoned Insect Officer Rome, Wine Barrel, and told him, "This corngrass is in the process of brewing a corngrass sprite worm. Remember to arrange insect guards to watch over it day and night. Don't make any mistakes." "Rest assured, sir, Rome will personally take care of it. The corngrass sprite worm will definitely be nurtured smoothly without any disturbance." Rome replied happily. Witnessing the birth of a new sprite worm had become a daily occurrence in the flower town. This was indeed a place blessed by the glory of the night. List then ordered the barley settlement's steward, Gajiel, "Don't forget to fertilize and water the cordyceps. If there are any signs of disease or wilting, inform me immediately." As long as there was adequate nutrition and meticulous care, the gestation of a sprite worm would normally take 10 days to half a month. Most of them suffered from dystocia or miscarriage due to various reasons such as not being discovered or not being nurtured properly. But in the flower town, there was no such problem. 1 lesser sprite and 9 sprite worms. The number of sprites in my territory is about to catch up with Lavera. He thought happily. Surpassing her was only a matter of time. When Lavera was in theft, she received a tulip lesser sprite and 12 sprite worms. In the following 3 years, she lost a sprite worm, but 2 more sprite worms were born in her territory. Therefore, she now had 13 sprite worms. The maintenance of these elves allowed Falcon Town to remain prosperous. However, Falcon Town's potential was far inferior to Flower Town's. There was no monopoly business that could bring cash flow, such as seafood and flower soap. There was no rich variety of potions. She only had the tulip potion, which was the black tulip given to her by List. There was no intermediate world of Warcraft or Dragon Horse. Even if she trained a knight squad, it would be an ordinary team. Flower Town had black blood horses, and a knight squad formed in the future would definitely be comparable to an elite team like the Coral City Orders of Chivalry. Of course, Lavera was not List's goal. He did not want to compare himself with a woman. He cared more about when he could surpass Levis. Levis broke through the Earth Knight realm before he reached adulthood. His talent was praised, but I've already caught up. I am also an elite Earth Knight. Now my goal is the same as his, to advance to a Sky Knight. The path of potions was smooth, which made List full of pride. The Sky Knight is easy for me. The Count is called the Wave Sword Saint by the people of the Eagle Kingdom. In the future, I will be known as the Flame Sword Saint. The knight mainly used a gun to charge on horseback. In a one-on-one fight, the sword was the main weapon. Sky Knights no longer needed to charge together with the main force. A single person and a single sword could sweep away an ordinary group of 100 knights. That was why they called themselves Sword Saints and were known as Sword Saints. Now, the future Flame Sword Saint List Tulip was heading to the office to convene a meeting of the town's officials. "Advisor Gort and everyone, I intend to promote farmers' chicken farming in Flower Town." He was too lazy to make excuses for his ideas. He directly ordered what the smoke mission required. Anyway, no one dared to question him. In the next half a month, the scale of breeding should reach 1,500. Raising chickens was not a simple job, and the mortality rate was not low. This had to be taken into account. After a pause, he continued, "Chickens are raised for the castle. The castle subsidizes the feed for the chicks. After they are raised, the castle will take them back. However, the eggs laid by the hens during this period will be recovered by the castle at the market price as a reward for the farmers raising the chickens. Do you have anything to add?" "Sir, in this way, it seems that no farmers are willing to raise roosters. Or do we only raise hens?" Isaiah asked. He knew that even without roosters, hens would lay eggs. But without a rooster to mate, hens could not lay eggs and could not hatch chicks. List answered without thinking, set a standard. Farmers who are willing to raise chickens must raise 9 hens with 1 rooster. Those who have the conditions can try to hatch their own chicks. These chicks belong to the farmers themselves. Of course, you also have to review. Those who do not have the conditions to raise chickens are not allowed to raise chickens. Winter was coming. If they could not even build a chicken coop, then raising chickens would only freeze them to death. If they were willing to let the chickens live with people, then there was no need for a chicken coop. After a brief discussion, the chicken raising operation was launched. 1,500 chickens were divided among the households. It was easy to pick out farmers suitable for raising chickens. At the same time, the flower caravan and the thorns caravan were also notified to purchase chicken seedlings from major cities and even mature chickens and send them to the flower town. Within half a month, it should not be a problem to raise 1,000 chickens before the arrival of the winter snow. Gort counted on his fingers. In previous years, the temperature would drop and snow would fall in the flower town in mid-December. Then it would continue intermittently for 2 months. By mid-February next year, the temperature would begin to rise. List swirled the red wine in his glass. This was the castle banquet, not only the flower town, but also half of the Coral Island. However, the flower town, located in the northeasternmost corner, would be the most seriously affected. He guessed that the snow was probably brought about by a small cold current. On Earth, the temperature would often plummet with the arrival of a cold current. This world was not clear, but the general principle should not be very different. The Coral Island was an island and would be deeply affected by the cold current, even if it was only a small cold current. By the way, Advisor Gort, how is the preparation for the winter cold going? Oh, please rest assured, for the sake of my pitiful salary, no serfs will freeze to death in the flower town this year. I swear by the glory of the night, if one freezes to death, I will personally go to the Eagle Kingdom and catch a serf. Gort said exaggeratedly. He was actually trying to amuse and lighten the atmosphere of the banquet. Since List gradually turned the banquet into a work meeting, the explosive atmosphere of a normal aristocratic banquet had rarely appeared. Everyone was used to eating and drinking. This was probably related to List's quiet temperament. On the other hand, Gort liked liveliness. Elegantly cutting the steak, List, unaffected by Gort, continued to maintain his usual quiet temperament. The coal protection work is only part of the winter strategy. This winter, the serfs cannot be left idle. We must continue to carry out projects to transform the infrastructure of the flower town. Chapter 206. Elksun still took the time to study the bone fragments handed over by List. Of course, he is not a scientist after all. He is just a magician whose passion for communication is greater than his pursuit of truth. After a few days of fiddling, he handed the fragments back to List. Baron List, according to my judgment, this is the remains of a huge creature. Over the years, the magic attached to the bones has completely dissipated, so it can probably still be used to make bone tools. The hardness is very good, not much worse than iron. He gracefully saluted. In addition, thank you for your generous hospitality. I have finished making a new batch of flame mushroom magic potions, so I will say goodbye to you. Well, next time you come, don't forget to continue to buy magic books for me. No problem. Elksun left lightly, presumably going back to Coral City. Magicians are also human beings. They can go to brothels and continue to explore the truth of life without getting married. In front of the apple table, there were a few snacks and pastries. Dosen lay on the edge of the table, staring at the pastries, wanting to eat but not daring to stretch his head. A beautiful white elf, Ella, swayed on the apple tree. With List watching from the side, it did not tie up Tremblingwoods. Instead, it dozed off on the tree. Occasionally, leaves fell, and it flew out, chasing the leaves, entertaining itself. On the chair under the tree, List leaned back and turned the dragon bone fragments in his hand, looking a little disappointed. It seems that it can only be used to make bone tools for the serfs to plow the fields. Alas, dragon bones are such precious things. They are used for farming. What a waste. Butler Carter came over and reported, Master, there are a total of 20 carts of bone fragments, all of which have been transported into the warehouse and stacked neatly. Do you want to count them yourself? No, Mr. Carter, I am very relieved that you can check for me. Carter smiled reservedly. Thank you for your trust, Master. It is my honor to serve the castle. Don't forget to tell Harpagon and Sherlock about the search for bone craftsmen. The bone shop has begun construction, but the bone craftsmen have not arrived yet. Also, help me find out more about the signs of competition between the two. I don't want the two caravans to have a conflict because of the sale of the flower soap. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on Harpagon and Sherlock. List nodded and said to himself, what businessmen need is control. Once they are given extra power, they will get carried away. This is not good. He also gradually began to hate the merchants. Sure enough, well-behaved farmers were the Lord's favorite subjects. Merchants were active and their ambitions would always expand from time to time. Because the production of flower soap was temporarily limited, in order to limit the other side, the two even bribed Burnell to suppress their opponents. They completely forgot about List's intention to cooperate with them. Punishment had to be meted out. He was prepared to have old Grandet come out of retirement once more, reorganize the two caravans, and reduce their independent power. He was going to promote a few natives of the flower town to serve as important backbones of the caravan, to supervise and restrain Harpagon and Sherlock. It would be great if we had the 3-corpse brain pill. We could give them one each, and they wouldn't need to use any tricks to restrict them. They would be obedient. The Sun Moon Church's art of control was better than fear, and fear was better than taking medicine. List was very envious. Without the 3-corpse brain pill, it would be great if I could learn the life and death charm of Tianshan Tonglao. He couldn't help but think. There was internal strength in martial arts books, and there was magic in this world. Could it be possible to develop magic and chi to achieve the effect of the life and death charm or of the 3-corpse brain pill? At least the magic contract, in a sense, had some control over life and death. He took out the thick bast paper. He wrote a few serpentines on it. Life and death control magic, chi or contract development plan. Then he stuffed the thick bast paper into the space gem. For the time being, it was just a thought. He didn't have the ability to develop it. Perhaps it would not be too late to develop it later. The return of the flower brought half of the ship's bone fragments. This was only a small part of the bone fragments from a boneyard, but they were piled up in a newly built warehouse. With such sufficient raw materials, the amount of bone tools that could be forged would be massive. The primitive farming civilization of the flower town would leap to a new level of civilization after the farming tools were ready. At that time, a serf could cultivate more farmland and make use of all the empty wastelands of the flower town. When the last batch of bone fragments was delivered to the town by the flower, it was already close to mid-December. A bonesmith in the Coral City, Blake Bonesmith, under the temptation of a large sum of money, finally agreed to go to the flower town to preside over the bonesmith's shop, forge bone tools for the flower town, and teach apprentices. His family also came with him. His wife, 2 sons, daughter-in-law, and a newborn grandson. This family all had the skills of bonesmith. Of course, it was not exquisite. Therefore, they could not compete with the other bonesmith shops in the Coral City, which was why they were willing to come to the rural town. Blake, do your best and work for me. The return you will get is far greater than your efforts. List met with Blake. Your 2 sons are already fixed and have no development potential. However, when your grandson grows up, I can make an exception and let him train with the knight and become my retainer knight. Throwing out the opportunity to become an aristocrat, this move was always successful. Blake knelt down excitedly. I am willing to work for the Sir Lord and do my best. Very well. In the future, you will be proud of today's choice. The bonesmith Blake was fooled. Isaiah sent another piece of good news. The Flower Town scale of raising chickens officially crossed the 1,000 mark. After hearing about the benefits of raising chickens, all the farmers enthusiastically signed up, knowing that eggs were good things. However, chicken seedlings were not easy to buy. Most of them were saved from the rural farmers' homes one by one. Before the winter snow arrived, 1,000 were barely saved up. Mission completed. Reward: Fire Attribute Mineral Vein. The smoke mission was followed up in time, and the mission reward was issued. It was a mineral vein that List had never heard of. Fire Attribute Mineral Vein. What kind of, or is this? It sounds very valuable. It seems to have something to do with the dead fire dragon. It should be on Black Horse Island. It is likely that when Marcus led people to excavate the fragments, he found this kind of fire attribute mineral vein underground. Fire dragon, fire attribute mineral vein. List could not help but link the two together. However, in the description of the dragon, the elemental dragon did not produce minerals. He had never heard of a fire dragon that could produce this kind of fire attribute mineral vein. When Marcus comes back, I will ask him what vein he found. If he didn't find it, then I will have to immediately send people to search and excavate it. I have a feeling that the fire-attributed core is very important to me. After all, I am a fire-attributed chi. Thoughts flashed. Chapter 207. Looking at the contents of the smoke serpentines in front of him, List frowned deeply. Mission. The female monkeys in the fruit-stealing monkey training ground are about to give birth. The fruit farmer's skills in picking fragrant coconuts will come in handy, but natural reproduction is not as fast as wild capture. Please expand the size of the monkey group to 30. Reward. A thief who spies on the Lord. There was no problem with the content of the mission itself, and it was not difficult to expand the monkey group. If you buy monkeys from other places, as long as you pay enough money, there will always be hunters who catch monkeys and sell them. But the reward puzzled him. A thief who spies on the Lord. What does this want? He had always believed that the Flower Town was a paradise on the Coral Island. With the protection of the Tulip family's bloodline, no one would have any ideas about the Flower Town. But this mission reward was directed at List himself. There is a thief who is ready to spy on him. Is it to remind me that there is a thief who is going to harm me? List shook his head, not believing this possibility. Obviously, the smoke mission will not be so straightforward. Perhaps this is the same as the Invisible Dragon Chain mission? It is a reward for the invasion of the Invisible Dragon, but in fact, it is a space gem. With his exploration and knowledge of the smoke mission, this possibility is very high. But in any case, the security and defense of the territory must be strengthened. Although the essence of the smoke mission is to reward me, if there is a thief, I will have to bear the loss myself. The smoke mission is just a choice of fate. I am afraid it will not work if I am not prepared. He informed the caravan to buy monkeys. He summoned Carl and Ram and ordered them to strengthen the management of the patrols and insect protection teams and pay strict attention to all movements in the territory. Marcus was in charge of the work on Black Horse Island, so he temporarily let the two Retainer Knight and Xavier maintain the castle's patrol security. He also told the butler, Carter, to pay attention to check the people entering and leaving the castle, whether they were servants, territorial officials, or officers. Once there was a suspicious person trying to sneak into the castle, he was to be notified immediately. Master, are you aware of something? Carter was puzzled by List's orders and seemed a little nervous. List nodded. The Flower Town's development is very rapid. In less than a year, it has already changed its appearance. If it were any other territory, I would also have some thoughts that I shouldn't have. The winter snow is about to descend, and I don't want anything unpleasant to happen at the last moment. Understand, I will strictly instruct the servants to protect the safety of the castle. Yes, List replied absent-mindedly. He walked to the window and looked at the gloomy sky outside. The temperature had begun to drop, and the cold current had arrived. The sunny days of Flower Town were about to pass, and the annual 2-month-long ice and snow covered the town. He looked into the distance and saw a field of black nightshade. At the edge of the black nightshade field, a group of serfs were working in full swing. They were building an ice cellar. Building an ice cellar wasn't easy, as it required a lot of construction skills to build an underground cellar that could store ice cubes. More importantly, the construction process would cost a lot of gold coins. List dared to build an ice cellar, of course, because he had a profitable business and was full of confidence. For this reason, he contacted Tulip Castle and invited the island's master craftsmen and architects to preside over the construction of the ice cellar. This architect, Mbappe Gravel, was a distant relative of Viscount Jonas Gravel of Gravel Castle. It was he who presided over the construction of the magnificent Tulip Castle. After coming to Flower Town, He took a fancy to Dosun's rock thorns at first glance. Barren list. With Dosun's rock thorns, the difficulty of building an ice cellar will be greatly reduced, and the speed will be greatly accelerated. This is a natural cellar support pillar. The rock thorns released by Dosun each reached a height of 5 meters, sharp at the top and thick at the bottom, with the thickest reaching a diameter of about 40 centimeters. It could release at least 200 rock thorns a day. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a small rock dragon. Dosun Avenue has long been completed, and rock thorns are still produced every day, almost piling up into a mountain. Therefore, in the future, if List wants to build a new castle, there is no shortage of materials. Then again, the basalt on Black Horse Island is also a good building material. This year, I will build 3 ice rooms for your cellar, which is almost enough. If you want to continue to expand, you can wait until next year. As long as you have money, you can build any big ice cellar. The ice cellar of Tulip Castle has 25 ice rooms. Mbappe Gravel did not care much about this small project. He only occasionally came to supervise the work, and the serfs and his apprentices were working. The ice room is a room in the ice cellar used to store ice. A standard ice room can store 300 cubic meters of ice, which is equivalent to the size of a house of 100 square meters. 3 ice rooms, 900 cubic meters, plus a little saltpeter left. There's no need to worry about ice in Flower Town next summer. When Carter brought him a cup of coffee, List took his eyes back from the window, sat back in his chair, and smiled a little self-deprecatingly. "Mr. Carter, do you think we're like squirrels going through the winter? When autumn comes, we start looking for food to hide and eat in the winter." Carter responded a little playfully, "I think squirrels are a very smart little animal. Other animals can only starve during the winter, but they can hide in their caves and eat a little of their own hard-earned food every day. This kind of life is actually what the civilians of the town look forward to." He went on to say, "Your arrival has made Flower Town rich and brought them the life they want." List quite likes to listen to this kind of flattery. Although he is no longer pure, and all the interests are based on himself and his aristocratic identity, he thinks that he has really made the civilians of Flower Town live a good life. It is natural for the people to thank him, respect him, and worship him. If you don't have these 3 feelings, then you are an ungrateful ingrate. They're my people. As a lord, it is my duty to lead them to a happy life," List said lightly. His expression was calm. There was no complacency, no compassion, only the nobility that aristocrats should show. If it was an ugly aristocrat, no matter how noble it is, it would be the same thing. But with List's handsome face, it directly exudes a great personal charm. Carter was immediately excited. "You have inherited all the nobility of the Tulip family and the Taro family. May the glory of the night always look after you." The touching performance in the castle continued. On the vast sea outside Coral Island, several sailboats with red tulip flags were braving the wind and waves. The cabin was filled with ragged, sallow, and emaciated serfs who reeked of a horrible stench. These serfs seemed to have lost their spirit, lying weakly on the planks, motionless for a long time. "It's time to eat, it's time to eat." The shouts of the sailors came from afar. The serfs, who were half dead just now, quickly changed their state and rushed out of the cabin. A little female slave, about 8 or 9 years old, was knocked down by the serf next to her and fell to the ground. Watching as the others squeezed out of the cabin to get food, tears welled up in her eyes and quickly rolled down her dirty cheeks. Suddenly, Chapter 208. Wiping away the slave girl's tears with her thumb, the owner of the hand said in a hoarse voice, "Get up." The slave girl raised her head and saw a face with a scarf on it. Her hair was messy and the scarf was dirty, but the exposed eyes were so bright that the slave girl could not open her eyes. She was wearing a leather armor that had been worn for many years, and the edges of the armor had been worn thin. She carried a big sword on her back, and the hilt was wrapped in rags. Her chest was tightened by the leather armor. Because she squatted down, her knees touched and squeezed, and the threads of the leather armor almost burst. After wiping the slave girl's tears, she stood up. She was tall. Her clothes looked a little sloppy, but it revealed a strange, wild temperament. This made the slave girl quickly remember the group of people who rushed into the village, killed, robbed, separated her from her family, and took her to the serf market. According to the serfs in the market, that group of people were evil mercenaries, and the woman in front of her was like a mercenary. Frightened, the slave girl seemed to have gained strength. She struggled to get up from the ground and apologized in a panic. "I'm sorry, madam. I didn't mean to fall." The mercenary looked at her and said in a hoarse voice again, "You didn't do anything wrong. Why should you apologize?" The slave girl did not know how to answer. She was so flustered that she wanted to cry again. "Come with me," the mercenary said in an unquestioning tone and turned to leave the cabin. The slave girl was hesitant, but she did not dare to not follow the other party. She lowered her head and did not even dare to look at the mercenary's back. The mercenary seemed to be walking in the direction of the cafeteria. On the way, she suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "Girls have to learn to be strong, especially when walking alone." The slave girl did not know how to answer, but it seemed that the mercenary did not expect her to answer. In a flash, she walked to the cafeteria. The mercenary pushed away the crowded serfs, took the slave girl to the window to get food, and shouted, "Fat Jack, get her a meal." "Ah, yes, Captain Swan." While speaking, the mercenary had turned around and was ready to leave. The slave girl stood in front of the window, not knowing whether she should get food or follow the maid, until Fat Pig Jack put a semi-liquid food on a wooden plate and stuffed it into her arms. "Take it. I don't know what's wrong with Captain Swan, but he's helping the serfs get food again." Holding the fragrant rice, the slave girl felt that she was about to cry again. This time, she was so happy that she wanted to cry. His daily meal had never been as full as today. She whispered in a mosquito-like voice, "Thank you." She didn't know if she was speaking to Pig Jack or to Captain Swan. But she squatted in the corner of the deck and ate the food mixed with beans and flour. The name Captain Swan was firmly engraved in her heart. She couldn't understand the serpentine between the mercenary and the sailor. She only remembered the pronunciation of Fat Pig Jack's name for the mercenary. Captain Swan is very sympathetic to the slave girl. On the bow deck, the female mercenary was enjoying the sea breeze. The second mate of the ship walked forward and asked in what he thought was an elegant manner, "Why can't I?" "Of course not. On the contrary, such a move is heartwarming. I can see that under Captain Swan's tough style, there is a soft female heart." The mercenary didn't answer the topic and just looked at the sea. The second mate was not reconciled and said, "I've seen you help several of these little slave girls. Do you see your own shadow in them?" People tend to reminisce about their past selves. Did you have such a childhood? Sorry, I didn't mean to mention it. I just wanted to know more about you, Captain Swan. A moment later, just when the second mate thought he had failed, the mercenary looked at the seagulls on the sea and slowly said, "I have a sister. I haven't seen her for 4 years. If she were still alive, she would be the same age as the slave girl." "Well, I see. Parting from family is indeed." Not waiting for the second mate to answer, the mercenary suddenly changed her tone and said impatiently, "Now that your curiosity has been satisfied, can you get out of here?" Don't be like that, Captain Swan. I know you're in a bad mood now," the second mate said, reaching out and trying to pat her on the shoulder. "I just want to comfort you, or I can lend you a shoulder." But not waiting for his hand to touch her shoulder, the mercenary suddenly hit the second mate 2 meters away with an elbow. "Get out, you!" The second mate was angry. He was greeted by the cold eyes of the mercenary and a hoarse voice. "Don't bother me if you don't want to die. I believe the captain won't care if a few bodies are left at sea." The second mate was full of anger, but he immediately choked back, rubbed his chest, and walked down the deck unwillingly. When he entered the cabin where the sailors rested, he was immediately laughed at by a group of disheveled sailors. "Speak, look, the best performance of overestimating yourself. Ha! With your pockmarked face, you dare to provoke Captain Swan. It's so funny. Don't be discouraged. Speak, you lasted 2 minutes longer than Fox. Spick didn't last more than 5 minutes. The loser pays for it consciously." In order to celebrate Speak's failure, I've decided to have another sip of watered-down gin, haha. The sailors in the cabin laughed rudely. The mercenary didn't hear it. She leaned on the railing of the deck, watching the bow break the waves, and her thoughts drifted away. Coral Island, Flower Town, Little Maggie, at the same time. The place she was looking forward to. In the castle, the gray-haired butler Carter walked over to the lord who was writing the historical epic of dragons fighting in the wild and said, "Master, there's one thing you should be happy to hear." "What is it?" List, who was writing a historical account of the evil fire dragon and the powerful dragon knight fought in the Blue Wave Sea, asked without looking up. The castle's trainee maid, Maggie, has become a contract mother and daughter with Mrs. Harriet of the grocery store. He heard the news about Maggie. List put down his quill pen, raised his eyebrows, and asked, "So, what's the plan of Harriet's family? To take Maggie back and stop the internship?" Maggie was a clue related to the smoke mission. He spent a lot of excuses to transfer Maggie to his side. He didn't want to let Maggie go casually. Carter's answer made him breathe a sigh of relief. "Of course not, Master. It is a great honor for civilians to be able to work in the castle. Harriet's family is reluctant to give up such a good opportunity." "Well, Mr. Carter, congratulate Maggie for me. By the way, will she come to the internship this afternoon?" "She didn't ask for leave. She should be doing the internship as usual." "Well, give her a grilled steak for dinner." Chapter 209, December 13th, early morning. For the monkeys in the fruit-stealing monkey training ground, the first snow of the year came with the arrival of new members. The monkeys that the Sir Lord ordered to buy had not yet arrived, but the 3 pregnant female monkeys had already given birth to baby monkeys, a total of 4, and one of the female monkeys was pregnant with twins. Perhaps the Flower Town was really a place blessed by the night's glory, as the 4 little monkeys had all survived. They could just see the first snow of Flower Town, mixed with the whistling north wind. Squeak, squeak. The monkeys cheered for the arrival of the snow in their own language. When the snow came, the fragrant coconut trees would stop growing, and the fragrant coconuts would no longer ripen. They stole fragrant coconuts all year round and knew this very well. The fragrant coconuts would no longer ripen, which meant that they didn't have to work this winter. Unfortunately, such an idea was ridiculous. Early in the morning, Jiggs, the manager of the training ground, took out fake fragrant coconuts and began training day after day. Sir Lord will buy more monkeys, and when the time comes, this group of fruit-stealing monkeys will be the model for the new monkeys to imitate. So everyone, be sure to train well and let the fruit-stealing monkeys be role models. Jiggs shouted loudly. In the training ground, he enjoyed the authority of a leader. Several other fruit farmers had to listen to him. "The female monkey I train can't train anymore today. She has to feed her own children. Then you go shovel the snow." "Why we have to shovel the snow? We don't shovel the snow every year. It's better to just stay in the house," a fruit farmer said indifferently. Giggs immediately said angrily, "Correct your attitude. Consultant Gort has already announced to the entire town that all farms and workshops must shovel the snow in front of their doors and work areas. After that, they must also shovel the snow on the roads nearby. You fool, do you dare to disobey the advisor's orders?" The fruit farmer certainly didn't dare to disobey, but he dared to complain to Jiggs. "Why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, I wouldn't have let the snow pile up in the training ground." Although he complained, he still took the broom he made in the farm and began to shovel the snow. It was just one night of snow, so the snow was not thick and could be swept away with a broom. Just like the fruit-stealing monkeys' training ground, the entire Flower Town began a mighty snow shoveling battle at dawn. The patrols beat gongs and drums and went from house to house urging the serfs to get up and shovel the snow. The snow on the roads must be shoveled first to prevent the carriage from moving and the construction of the territory from being delayed. This winter was destined to not be peaceful. Many meetings have been held in the castle and the administrative office to plan the construction works for the winter. Stretching, List was a little reluctant to get up from the bed. It started to snow last night, and the temperature had dropped to the point where he needed to wear thick clothes, so he had already covered himself with a quilt. Although the Earth Knight was resistant to cold and heat, no one would be stupid enough to be frozen. Of course, he needed a warm quilt. However, with his strong willpower, he resisted the corrosion of the bed and got up to open the door. The male servant and female servant were already waiting outside the door. The manservant Thomas had to help him get dressed, while the maid was responsible for cleaning the room. "Good morning, master." Thomas saluted with the leather armor in his hand. Little Lily, carrying a bucket, a duster, and a mop, also bowed to List. "Good morning, master." "Good morning." List was used to being helped to get dressed. He carefully tidied up his appearance in front of the mirror, then hurried out of the bedroom to walk the dog outside. Before he went out, he heard a cry. It was the thorny sprite, Ella, who flew out of the worm room and went out with him. List smiled and touched Ella's little head. "Ella, I'll take you to see the snow." "Wow!" Ella's eyes were wide open, and it was curious. It had never seen snow before. This was the first time it had seen snow since it was born. As soon as it left the castle, it flew around excitedly, fiddling with the snow on the ground, trees, and windows from time to time. Woof! Dosen stood at the door of the kennel and barked excitedly. It was also the first time it had seen snow. However, it should have seen enough last night. Now it probably saw List and knew that it could have fun, so it was excited. Dosen's chain was untied. Intermediate World of Warcraft, which had been raised as a watchdog, flew out in one stride, shaking its head and tail in the snow, playing with the snow. Clatter! A small snowball hit Dosen's head. Ella learned from List and pinched a snowball to have a snowball fight. But its hand was too small, and the snowball was even smaller. Dosen didn't feel anything at all. Seeing that Dosen ignored it, it was furious and raised its hand to sow the seeds. However, the telepathic List felt its emotions and immediately stopped its behavior. "Ella, play with the snow, don't scatter seeds. Since it was so naughty, you might as well take it to the Thorns Ridge to plant trees." Then he pinched a large snowball himself and threw it. Clatter! It hit Dosen's big head. Trembling Woods stared blankly for a moment. It looked around, but it didn't know who hit it. A few seconds later, its attention shifted and it began to roll in the snow again. The snow was thin, so it just pressed its body and the snow melted, revealing the alfalfa underneath. It was rolling snow, but it was actually rolling grass. Very childish behavior, but considering that it was not even a year old, it was normal to be childish. Leaving Dosen and Ella to play with the snow, List began his daily cultivation class. The plan of a day is in the morning, the plan of a lifetime is in the diligence, and the polishing of chi is the work of water. If you want to become a flying sky knight and be known as a sword saint, you have to work hard. After the cultivation class, he returned to the castle to take a bath and change into formal noble clothes. He let the servants move the table to the window, leisurely eat breakfast, and enjoy the scene of the servants shoveling the snow. This is the tranquility of the countryside, which he could not enjoy before crossing over. Of course, the prosperity and charm of modern civilization is also incomparable to this backward world. He sometimes asks himself, if he was given a choice now, would he go back to his original life or stay as an aristocrat? For the first 2 months in Flower Town, he would choose to go back. Now, he will not hesitate to choose to stay and continue his unfinished dragon riding career. It's just that I miss soybean milk, fried dough sticks, and porridge buns. By the way, why don't I let Mrs. Abby and the bakery's Rainer invent the buns? They were all pasta, but the pasta made from wheat flour was not just bread. Steamed buns, flour rolls, dumplings, wontons, noodles, pancakes, fried dough sticks, glutinous rice balls, shumai, ramen, these are common noodles. Although List was originally a southerner and did not eat much noodles, dumplings and steamed buns were obviously more in line with his taste than eating bread every day. Thinking about this, he could not help but think of Xiangli's classic quote. Chapter 210. Steamed buns, fermented flour, kneaded with water, and then steamed in a pot. After breakfast, Liz took a piece of thick bass paper and began to sort out his impression of pasta cooking methods. Most pasta dishes were very simple. Even if he didn't eat much, he knew the basic method. The most important thing in dough is fermentation. Fortunately, bread also needs to be fermented, so the rest is a matter of creativity. But think about it carefully. It was not just a matter of creativity. Although there was magic and chi here, food preservation was a serious constraint. Bread had a long shelf life, especially the black bread eaten by civilians, which could be eaten for half a year. But steamed buns, if not eaten for 2 days, would probably grow hair. Even if civilians came up with this delicacy, they were reluctant to make it. Not finishing it was a serious waste. When a knight goes out to fight, bread should be the main food. It is easy to carry and not easy to spoil. At least bring some biscuits and baked pies. You can't go to the battlefield with dumplings and Wuxia. He concluded and felt that it was a bit presumptuous. Pancakes, noodles, cornbread, they have a long shelf life. Just a little water, they could be eaten anywhere. So, in the final analysis, it was poverty that limited the imagination of the locals. He continued to study the recipes and wrote down the pasta cooking methods in his limited memory. Steamed buns, fermented flour, wrapped in vegetables, and then steamed in a pot. Dumplings, fermented flour, kneaded dough into strips, cut into small pieces, rolled into dumpling wrappers with a rolling pin, wrapped in vegetables, and then steamed in a pot. Noodles, fermented flour, dough constantly pulled into long strips. Before he finished writing this entry, he suddenly felt that this method seemed to be the same as ramen. There should be a difference between ramen and noodles. Alas, I can't think of the difference. Forget it, I'll combine it into one entry. After writing these recipes, List thought about it. It was a bit high profile to launch too many at once. He picked out the simplest steamed buns and prepared to give advice to Mrs. Abby and the baker Rainer and let them invent it. With steamed buns, the subsequent buns were easy to make. Of course, after all, pasta was not List's favorite food. He was just going to make it and improve the taste. Therefore, he wasn't really passionate about it. His favorite dishes were still the authentic Sichuan cuisine and Huayan cuisine. Unfortunately, these dishes had high requirements for knife skills, ingredients, and condiments. List could not do anything about it. It was not easy to instruct Mrs. Abby to make scrambled eggs and egg soup. Immediately, he ordered someone to call Rainer and Mrs. Abby and told them about a kind of pasta he got from other places. He also described the general appearance of the steamed buns. Mrs. Abby, Rainer, study the steamed buns when you have time. Master, just leave it to me. The method of making steamed buns sounds very simple. I'll be able to steam buns very soon. Since inventing several new types of bread, scrambled eggs, and egg soup, Mrs. Abby already had the imposing manner of a star chef and was full of self-confidence. Rainer also nodded. I will do my best to assist Mrs. Abby. He had heard others say that Mrs. Abby had invented egg soup and scrambled eggs. All the chefs in Coral City had learned cooking from Mrs. Abby. Therefore, he admired her very much and was willing to cooperate with Mrs. Abby in food research. Man to instructed. Read a book and write something. The short time of the morning was about to pass. Just when Liz thought that today would be another leisurely day, a knight galloped from Coral City. Lord Baron, the tulip caravan has returned. Sir Frank asked you to send someone to Coral City to hand over the business. He did not directly say that the serfs had arrived, but List naturally understood. I will send someone immediately. You go and rest first. Thank you, Lord Baron. A moment later, Gord arrived and was instructed by Liz to immediately arrange how to hand over the serfs. This time was different from the last time. The temperature had just dropped and it was snowing. If one was not careful, the serfs would freeze to death. Fortunately, preparations were made. The carriages of the caravan were requisitioned, and a bunch of cold-resistant materials were ready to go to Coral City. List had planned to go in person, but he remembered the mineral deposits of Black Horse Island. Calculating the time, Marcus would return with the ship this afternoon and was likely to bring news of the fire a tribute condensed core mineral veins. He handed the 300 gold coins he had saved these days to Gord. Consultant Gort, I bought this batch of serfs for 210 gold coins. There are 1,000 of them. The number of losses does not exceed 150 is acceptable, but more than that, you need to compensate me. I will explain it to Frank in detail. These 300 gold coins are the cost of buying a new batch of serfs. Try to keep the price of serfs as low as possible. The war will definitely bring countless serfs. I believe there is room for further compression of the price. How to talk is up to you. Please rest assured, I am familiar with Frank. Even if I can't touch his bottom line, I won't let him take much advantage of me. By the way, can I take advantage of him in some things? Gort was a little hesitant and embarrassed to say it. Liz said, say what you want to say. Your charm is unmatched on Coral Island, and you are the ideal marriage partner for many aristocratic ladies. I can see that Frank's family is eager to get your attention. Maybe I can use this to reduce the price to the bottom line and buy more serfs. Aristocrats are graceful, but it is normal to use all the resources around them for their own benefit. That's why Gort came up with such a handsome man trick. But Liszt couldn't get past his own psychological barrier and directly denied it. Frank is a sensible aristocrat. I believe he has his own code of conduct, so don't involve little Sally. Try to fight for the difference of a few gold coins or a dozen gold coins. He did lack liquidity, but he had a lot of fixed assets, so there was no need to be unscrupulous. Especially when it came to feelings, he wanted to retain a sense of innocence. Alas, I was still alone at the age of 30 in my previous life, and I was troubled. In this life, when I turned 16, there was a line of girls chasing me, which also annoyed me. Sure enough, as Liszt guessed, in the afternoon, when the snow stopped, the flowers returned from the sea. In addition to bringing half a ship of fire dragon bone fragments, Marcus also brought information about the fire-attributed core mineral vein. My lord, this is a stone I dug out from a crack in a rock pillar when I was excavating the bone fragments. It is very strange, and I can vaguely feel the existence of magic power on it. He handed over an irregular reddish-brown stone. The surface of the stone was smooth, and the regular lines of concentric circles could be seen on the fracture surface, just like the shell surface of clamshell. The overall texture was like glass, and the edges were even transparent, but it was far less transparent than gems and crystals. It felt lighter than ordinary stones, and upon closer inspection, one could see that there were a lot of bubbles inside. Chapter 2:11. Volcanic glass is a natural glass formed in volcanic eruptions. Liszt didn't know much about why glass was formed. Otherwise, he would have studied glass a long time ago. As for whether the reddish-brown stone in his hand was volcanic glass or not, it was just his speculation. He was not an expert, so it was hard to judge. The smoke mission said that this thing is a fire attribute core. Marcus said that he felt signs of magic. I have to check carefully to see if it really has fire attribute magic. He immediately cast the magic eyes. His pupils rotated like a whirlpool, and his deep eyes swept over the reddish-brown stone. Suddenly, the reddish-brown stone changed, turning into a little red light in his field of vision. The light seemed very faint, but it exuded a gorgeous texture, which was completely different from the general fire attribute magic. An idea suddenly came to Liszt's mind. This magic, it shouldn't be the residual magic of the fire dragon, right? Now that it has been inferred that Black Horse Island was created by the fallen fire dragon, it is not surprising that the magic in this magical stone belongs to the fire dragon. He even thought of a possibility that the volcano formed by the fire dragon should be an active volcano that often erupts. After all, the magic of the dragon is long-lasting. But if there is a rock wrapped in magic, the volcano will definitely die without the influence of magic. This kind of stone is called a fire attribute core, and the bubbles inside are wrapped in magic. It is very likely that the magic of the fire dragon was wrapped in it, making it impossible to drive the volcano to erupt. The magic of the fire dragon. Liszt felt that he was going to make a fortune. Anything related to the dragon was of great value. The fire dragon is an elemental dragon. Although it is not a metal dragon, a gem dragon, nor a sacred dragon, it also has the magical power to infect the surroundings. Therefore, the magic left by it is of extraordinary value. Liszt suppressed his excitement. He calmly asked, "Teacher Marcus, is there a lot of this or on Black Horse Island?" "I don't know exactly how many there are on the island, but in the boneyard, there are a lot of these stones scattered in the cracks of the rock pillars." Mine all of it." "Your feeling is correct. I can also see the magic power contained in it." Since Marcus didn't know that this was a product of Fire Dragon, Liszt chose to keep it a secret. "I believe that this will be a good material for forging equipment or something else." However, he still underestimated Marcus's intelligence and imagination. "A magic stone, my lord. Don't you think it looks like a gemstone produced by a dragon?" He raised his eyebrows, then relaxed again. Liszt pretended to be surprised. "Why would you think of a dragon gem? This kind of stone doesn't look like a gem at all." "Sir, it might not be a gem from a gem dragon or a metal from a metal dragon, but a stone left behind by an elemental dragon. Other than a dragon or a super dragon in World of Warcraft, I couldn't think of any animal that could be left behind. Coupled with these magical stones, it must be the remains of a dragon." At this point, Marcus became more and more certain that his inference was correct. Maybe many years ago, a dragon slayer killed a dragon, and it happened on Black Horse Island. This series of inferences, Liszt's mood was very complicated. It should have been a lucky thing to have smart subordinates, but the sense of superiority in IQ was greatly reduced. Now that Marcus had guessed the answer, he thought a little and decided to no longer keep it a secret. "Do you really think that this is an elemental dragon?" "Yes, my lord." Marcus's eyes lit up and his inspiration overflowed. "And I also thought of something else. The black-blooded horses on the island are extraordinary. They all thought there was a World of Warcraft species, but why can't it be a dragon? They live on Black Horse Island and have been in contact with the remains of an elemental dragon for a long time. Perhaps they have been infected into a dragon stallion." Once the hole in his brain opened, he couldn't stop for a moment. Even the secret of the dragon stallion was guessed by him. Taking a deep breath, Liszt said in a heavy tone, "Teacher Marcus, you should know what it means for us if this is true." Marcus thought seriously for a full 2 minutes and said aloud, "My lord, this means that you are the son of glory that Gort thinks you are. The glory of the night will always look after you. As your follower, I am deeply honored and hope to follow in your footsteps and make a career." His tone was full of excitement. After that, he knelt on one knee and performed a solemn knight's oath of allegiance. Seeing such a reaction, Liszt suddenly felt that he was sometimes too cautious. The knight's system in this world was deeply rooted. The degree of brainwashing of the glory of the knight was no less than that of the Lord. The authority of the Lord was almost unshakable, especially for someone like Marcus, who was passionate about nobility. Maintaining the authority of the Lord was to maintain his ideals and ideas. In the future, he would also be a noble lord. So many secrets could actually be shared with his subordinates. However, with the idea that there was no harm in being cautious, Liszt still hoped to keep many secrets in his stomach, such as the space gem, the smoke mission, and how much money he had. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he said lightly, "May the glory of the night watch over you and me." The performance was over and back to business. Liszt said in a deep voice, "I feel that the stone contains fire magic. Perhaps this is the product of a fire dragon." However, looking at the degree of decay of the bones, I am afraid that the fire dragon has been dead for more than thousands of years. It is hard to say how much benefit it can survive. Indeed, but it is a huge gain to determine that the black blood horse is a dragon horse. We don't pay enough attention to the black blood horse. The black blood horse really needs to be paid more attention. The domestication work will be handed over to Teacher Marcus. I am willing to serve my lord. There is also this kind of stone, let's call it volcanic glass. Its mining work should also be followed up. Liszt felt that the fire attribute nucleus was a bit awkward and irresponsibly named it. I will study its role as soon as possible so that I can measure its value. Marcus nodded and suddenly asked, "Sir, would it be too wasteful to use those dragon bone fragments directly to make a bone tool for plowing? I also feel that it is wasteful, but I have asked the magician to study it." It has decayed for too long. There is no magic at all, and the magic has long dissipated, leaving only the advantage of hardness. Those 5 dragon bones should still have some magic. Well, focus on protecting them, and leave them to be slowly studied in the future. As you wish. After the discussion about the fire dragon and volcanic glass, List remembered a previous idea. Teacher Marcus, I have fought against Randy and Russell. Their strength is slightly inferior and has not been able to prove my strength. In Flower Town, only you can prove my strength. Marcus was surprised. Sir, have you honed your Chi's secret book? Chapter 2:12. Bang! Bang! The knight's spear made of fine steel bent and deformed with the impact of the 2 elite Earth Knights. Every time it collided, sparks were produced and a harsh sonic boom was heard, as if it would break at any time. Even if it did not break, the 2 spears were on the verge of being scrapped and needed to be melted down and recast. List was surrounded by fire attribute Chi, like a god of war in flames. Marcus was surrounded by wind attribute Chi, like a drifting cloud. Russell and Randy, watching from a distance, saw the collision of flames and clouds. The clouds were defensive, the flames were offensive, and the sky was full of fiery clouds. Marcus is an elite Earth Knight, and Lord Baron is not at a disadvantage. Every time he charges, he can suppress Marcus. I can't believe it. Randy was stunned. Russell smiled bitterly. I know that Lord Baron is very strong. I can't take a shot from him during the charge, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. Even Marcus is not his opponent. Perhaps this is talent. Randy sighed. The Count founded the Coral Island. He is a talented knight. His bloodline, Sir Levis, Baron Lavera, and Lytton, have shown excellent talent since childhood. Originally, the worst was Lord Baron, but I didn't expect Lord Baron to be so well prepared. Perhaps it also includes hard work. Every morning, I could see Lord Baron practicing Chi on the horse field. At this point, the 2 looked at each other and were silent. People who are more talented than you work harder than you. What else is there to say? At this time, the 2 people in the distance launched their 6th charge. The flames were still fierce, but the clouds were gradually thinning. The moment the knight's spear hit, the violent burst of flames broke the thin clouds in one fell swoop. 1 black and 1 yellow horse staggered. Marcus's figure flew from the horse's back and fell heavily to the ground. His knight's spear was also broken in 2. Roar! Black Dragon raised its front hooves and neighed loudly. List held the curved knight's spear with 1 hand. His chest was heaving up and down. After 6 consecutive charges, even the elite Earth Knight felt extremely tired. However, he was extremely excited. Panting, he said, Mr. Marcus, I won. Marcus crawled up from the ground. There was a moment of confusion in his eyes before he calmed down and panted heavily. My lord's strength has exceeded my imagination. Even though I don't have enough experience in charging, all that's left is time. May victory be with you from now on. I took advantage of the horses, List said humbly. Even without Black Dragon, I wouldn't be able to persist for long. My total amount of Chi is already far behind yours. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth and swallowed it back. He probably wanted to ask if List had become an elite Earth Knight. Marcus didn't ask, and List didn't intend to say. He dismounted and motioned to the retainer knight to take away the damaged knight's spear. He said to Marcus, I have proven my strength in charging on the battlefield, but I hope to fight with Mr. Marcus again tomorrow with a sword. Charging was more about Chi, while sword fighting relied more on fighting skills. Marcus nodded. It's better to change it to the evening. I can recover my Chi in the evening. I need to go to sea early tomorrow morning. Good. During the conversation, Randy and Russell had come over and congratulated List. After this battle, List had understood the gap between the Earth Knight and the elite Earth Knight. Referring to Marcus's strength, he had a clear understanding of the strength of the 2. I have learned a lot from the battle with Mr. Marcus. You can often ask Marcus for advice in the future. Yes, Lord Baron. Let's go have a cup of milk tea. List took the lead and walked under the apple tree. The servant quickly brought 4 cups of milk tea, which was brewed with fresh milk. Nowadays, cows produce milk vigorously and can produce several barrels a day. Every day, in addition to supplying the needs of the banquet and List's personal drink, the children who train hard in the night class will also be rewarded with a cup of fresh milk. In this way, there is still a lot of milk left every day. The serfs on the dairy farm will mix flour and milk to make dry milk powder. The original dry milk powder was all expropriated by Tulip Castle. Now the dry milk powder naturally entered List's castle and was stored. Whether it is eaten in the off-season or sold, it is a source of income. In the afternoon, the sun came out for a short while, then shrank back, and then began to snow. This situation will continue throughout the winter. With a nutritional supply of milk tea, Marcus's chi recovery speed is faster than expected, so the actual sword fight will be held ahead of schedule. List did not use the red blood sword. With the red blood sword, it is estimated that he can directly crush Marcus. He chose a steel long sword, a two-handed sword, and Marcus is also equipped with the same equipment, but List still wore the World of Warcraft leather armor, and Marcus can only wear ordinary leather armor. Lords and followers certainly can't enjoy the same treatment. No nonsense. There is no need for Randy and Russell to watch. The two are in the depths of the horse field, facing the flying snow, both holding swords against each other. List, who is inspired to become a flame sword saint, no longer has stage fright in this kind of actual training. His chi is freely gushing, and every move seems to be trying his best. Longfei, the steel long sword in his hand, stabbed upward, and a flame shot out like a flying fire dragon. Wind whirlpool. Marcus turned the steel long sword, and his chi wrapped around it. With the stirring of the long sword, it formed a whirlpool, directly swallowing List's flame chi. Clang! The steel long sword, which had lost the attachment of the fire chi, was hit by Marcus's long sword. The wind chi was still wrapped around it, and it was released in an instant, almost knocking List's long sword away. He grasped it hard and was able to hold it. Ooh, that was close. List's palms were sweaty. The feeling of a sword fight is completely different from a charge. Marcus in front of him is like a hedgehog, with a tight defense and no place to attack. Marcus stabs him in the back, which makes him very uncomfortable. The two have been fighting like this for more than 20 times. No one could do anything to the other. Marcus is experienced, mainly in defense, supplemented by sneak attacks. Every attack is at the moment when List's old and new chi are connected, which makes him unspeakably uncomfortable. However, List has a strong capital, a large amount of chi, and a fast recovery speed, barely able to support it. One is fierce, the other is experienced. The number of exchanges went up to more than 30 times, following which the two's chi can no longer keep up with the consumption. After another 10 exchanges, it is a draw. Both of them leaned on their steel-long swords, panting heavily in the heavy snow. "Teacher Marcus, you are going easy on me?" List suddenly asked. With his almost zero sword-fighting experience, it is a little exaggerated for him to be able to fight to a draw with Marcus. Before the sword fight, he was arrogant, thinking that he can get rid of Marcus in 10 minutes. At the beginning of the fight, Marcus's sneak attacks made his heart jump. He was afraid that if he is not careful, he will be killed by Marcus. After a long time, he realized that he can't do anything to Marcus. However, Marcus's counterattacks are no longer sharp, as if he doesn't have the energy to kill him. They are in a stalemate. He felt that Marcus went easy on him in the later stages of the fight. However, Marcus shook his head. His continuous panting caused him to speak intermittently. "In the first 10 exchanges, Lord's attacks are too fierce, and you don't give me any leeway. I do have the chance to defeat Lord. However, Lord's improvement is astonishing. Towards the end, I can't find an opportunity to sneak attack." Chapter 213. Charging and sword fighting with Marcus benefited List a lot. Building a car behind closed doors can certainly improve oneself, but it is also necessary to go out. Without actual combat testing, it is difficult to judge whether the skills you're honing are good or bad. And this kind of actual combat also gave List a clearer understanding of his own strength. Knowing oneself and knowing the enemy can win 100 battles. He believed that if he fought with Marcus again, whether it was a charge or a sword fight, he would be able to completely crush his opponent. The elite Earth Knight who takes potions and his strength completely crushes the elite Earth Knight who takes fighting skills. With money, you can really do whatever you want. So, the past few days of continuous combat have brought him the greatest summary of experience, not how to fight technically, but how to make money and take potions. Soon, a batch of fast-growing magic thorns will be harvested, and Elksun will make them into magic potions to assist the Flame Mushroom Magic Potion, which will speed up my path of taking potions. His eyes were shining, and he had already understood the essence of knight training. There is also World of Warcraft meat. Even if I borrow money, I will eat a few pounds every day. Dang, dang, dang. There was a knock on the door, and Carter's voice came from outside the door. Master. Putting away his thoughts, List put the thick bass paper with the words "Take potions, eat meat, drink milk" into a magic book he had recently read and responded, "Please come in. The caravan's carriage has returned, carrying the children of the serfs. Mr. Isaiah asked you for instructions on how to arrange these serfs. Let him arrange them according to the original plan." "Yes, master." Carter took out a letter from his arms and handed it to List. There is also a letter brought back by the caravan, written to you by Consultant Gort. Gort did not return with the caravan. There was still a large number of serfs staying outside, and he needed to arrange a place for them to live at night. So he asked the caravan to send a letter, introducing the handover of the serfs. He flipped through the letters, which recorded the number of serfs. The original order was for 1,000 serfs, including 200 craftsmen. However, only 836 serfs and only 144 craftsmen made it to Flower Town alive. The number of casualties was too high, exceeding the target List had given. Frank promised to supply us with 100 serfs and 20 craftsmen on the basis of the next serf sale. The letter recorded the result of the bargain between Gort and Frank. Following, that was a transaction of 300 gold coins. Frank did not agree because he had received a letter from Levis. It was mentioned that the war would stop with the arrival of winter, and the Count was already packing up the plundered resources and preparing to withdraw from the country. Frank wanted to wait for Levis to return before deciding whether to continue selling serfs. The Count is coming back. After reading the letter, List could not help but calculate the time. It was now December, and the Count had set off in September. He had been out on a campaign for nearly 3 months. Compared to previous years where he even spent the New Year's Day outside, this year's development order obviously did not last very long. I just don't know if this year's harvest will be abundant. The Eagle Kingdom is a big iron producer. If I can plunder more iron, or I could buy a batch and keep it for forging weapons and equipment. Try to arm a knight squad as soon as possible. Next year, if there's a chance, I will follow the Count to the battlefield to pick up some beans. List ate the dinner alone. The town officials were busy accepting this group of child serfs. Children without relatives were directly lodged with the serfs in Flower Town. Children with relatives were temporarily thrown into new houses in the residential area, waiting for their parents to arrive, and then living arrangements would be made. Food was distributed to the serfs' homes early in the morning, and then the serfs prepared it and sent it to the children. Extra clothes and bedding were borrowed from the serfs' homes to keep the children warm. After the castle bought new clothes, they would be returned to each serf. There were also many children with cold or acclimatized to the climate, and they needed to be taken care of by the old and steady serfs to prevent them from dying. This night was windy and snowy, but Flower Town was destined to be lively. Tomorrow was also a busy day. It would take time for more than 800 serfs to integrate into Flower Town's life. One of the biggest obstacles was the language problem. Snake was spoken here, while the new serfs mostly spoke Wind language. Fortunately, the previous batch of new serfs had learned basic Snake language and could communicate on their behalf. After dinner, List went to the town for a tour. Seeing the sallow and emaciated children shivering in the cold wind and being commanded by the middle-aged officials to salute him, List's heart was not very comfortable. This was a direct collision of two worldviews. He sighed in his heart. After showing his face, he went straight back to the castle, not in the mood to stay any longer. After returning to the castle, he went straight upstairs, just in time to see the maid Little Lily bending over to clean in the corridor. The improved version of the black and white maid uniform was stretched, revealing a pair of straight white pantyhose long legs. Under the skirt, there was a round curve, very respectable. Hearing footsteps, Little Lily quickly turned around and stood in the corner, letting List pass by. "Master." "Go on." List regretfully withdrew his eyes and entered his study, calmed his emotions for 3 minutes, and grabbed a volcanic glass on the table. He studied it for a while before taking a break at noon. No matter how he ran his chi, it could not penetrate the volcanic glass and come into contact with the magic in the bubble. The fire dragon magic was imprisoned in the bubble, as if it was completely solidified and could not be leaked. But after exploring it, he still found something. The fire magic around the volcanic glass was obviously a lot more restless, as if it was being pulled by the fire dragon magic in the bubble. It was a bit like a magnetic field. It was obviously separated by the volcanic glass and could not be touched, but it could cause the fire magic to become restless. Therefore, Marcus could feel its magic. With this characteristic alone, I feel it is suitable to make magic equipment. He silently pondered, if a lot of volcanic glass is arranged together, can it form a magic formation? Then it will cause the fire magic in the magic formation to riot and create an environment full of fire magic. If I put a mage in it, will he be able to create a fireball? This seemed to make no sense. So he wanted to break the volcanic glass and release the fire dragon magic in it. However, after the release, it was difficult to guarantee what the consequences of this magic belonging to the fire dragon would be. Will it infect the surrounding environment, such as causing a fire? He was not sure, but it was obviously not suitable to release it in the study. There were still many decorative books on the bookshelf, and it would be a pity to burn them. It was best to do it during the day. He put on his armor, found an open area, and released the fire dragon magic. But after thinking about it, he felt that it was too much of fuss. Just a few bubbles in a piece of volcanic glass. How much magic could be stored and how much reaction would it cause? After a moment of struggle, he still did not break the volcanic glass. Chapter 214. At dawn next day. After the Chi practice class was completed, List continued to study volcanic glass. He first took a piece of volcanic glass to the wasteland near the castle and smashed the volcanic glass. The bubble burst along with the volcanic glass, and under the observation of the magic eye, the fire dragon's magic escaped directly. The next moment, List was startled. These dissipating fire dragon magic entangled together, and under his gaze, condensed into the shape of a tiny dragon. The wings expanded, flapped up and down, and the figure was ethereal, as if it could be blown away by the wind at any time, turning back and forth in the air, really like a red dragon flying. List never thought that the dragon's magic could have such a mysterious change. He quickly remembered that when Glanny Zhun understood the triangle theory, he said that he believed that dragons and elves were derived from the combination of magic and matter. Now that he thought about it, it was really possible. Even it was likely that the dragon simply originated from magic. The fire attribute magic produced essence, and then the essence condensed into a fire dragon. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain why the fire dragon's magic, after so many years of evolution, could still form a small magic fire dragon. After thinking, looking at the magic fire dragon still floating in the air, and the snowflakes could not extinguish its light, List directly grabbed the magic fire dragon with his hand wearing the World of Warcraft leather cover. He just touched it. Bang! With a burst, the small fire dragon exploded in place, turned into a flame, and blew up his gloves on the spot. His palm hurt, and his skin was burned by the splash flames, almost burning the epidermis. Even if it was not burnt, it made his palm have 2 more blisters, burning with pain. It's quite powerful. List squeezed the blisters with his hand, gritted his teeth, and ran his qi to soothe the pain of the wound. The knight's qi has the effect of warming the body and healing wounds. The magic eye was not withdrawn. He was still observing. The magic power of the exploding fire dragon quickly condensed again, condensing into a new magical little fire dragon. Looking at the size, it was almost the same as before. This unscientific situation caught List off guard. He felt that this magical fire dragon was like the wind in the roaring wind valley. It would linger for a long time and would always linger in the wasteland near the castle. In case a serf passed by and accidentally touched the small fire dragon, it might immediately cause an explosion. The danger was not great, but it was still possible to scorch his skin or get blisters all over his body. Wait for something to absorb the magic of the fire dragon. He glanced at the broken volcanic glass on the ground, which was probably burned into liquid magma during the volcanic eruption, so that the fire dragon magic could be wrapped in it. Now that it had already condensed into solid glass, it was impossible to wrap it up even if he wanted to. Suddenly, he thought of something. Why don't I ask the crystal craftsman to carve the volcanic glass into bottles or jars, then use it to capture the fire dragon magic and store it? This volcanic glass obviously has the effect of blocking the magic of the fire dragon and is a natural storage container. With this thought, his worries were dispelled. He continued to study the flying magic fire dragon. The flight path of the small fire dragon was not fixed, but there seemed to be some restrictions that bound it to a fixed range. This range was the first small fire dragon that was crushed by List, and the explosion of the fire dragon magic spread, dispelling the magic eyes. The small fire dragon immediately disappeared from his field of vision. Casting the magic eyes, the small fire dragon appeared naturally, slowly flapping its wings to fly, turning and turning back within a fixed range, acting very leisurely. List touched it with his steel sword. The sword directly crossed the small fire dragon, or it could be said that the small fire dragon directly passed through the sword. There was no collision or reaction between the two. Why is there no reaction? After a little thought, he thought of a possibility. He immediately ran his qi, attached it to the steel sword, and touched the small fire dragon again. Bang! It exploded in an instant. Sparks flew in all directions, which could be seen without the magic eyes. After a while, everything calmed down. In the vision of the magic eyes, another small fire dragon appeared. This time, the small fire dragon's range of movement was limited by the new explosion range, flying in a circular space within 50 centimeters. Its size and total amount of magic were still the same. There was no loss. It really doesn't make sense. Why is it that there's no loss of energy, even though we're clearly doing it? This is similar to the nature of the dragon's gem. The gems produced by the dragon are also almost infinite, but no matter how infinite it is, there will eventually be a day when it is exhausted. This small fire dragon may explode thousands of times before it is completely annihilated. By the way, will it fly underground? List immediately waited for the small fire dragon to be closest to the ground and stretched out his steel sword to touch it. Bang! It exploded. This time, the center of the explosion was only 10 centimeters from ground. When the new small fire dragon condensed, it would fly to the ground. The moment it entered the ground, the remaining snow on the ground was instantly melted by the small fire dragon, and then the wet ground evaporated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, the small fire dragon flew out of the ground again, flew for a moment, and then entered the ground again. Since it is only the size of a palm, it can only dry a small area at a time, but after a few times, the dry area will have new changes. The dry soil gradually turned black and was scorched. He diverted the small fire dragon's detonation, dug up the scorched earth on the ground, knocked it, and found that it was as hard as a brick. Brick! At this moment, a light fell from the sky and fell into his mind. The magic fire dragon is equivalent to burning bricks. I can use it to burn bricks, pottery, and porcelain. Once the magic of the fire dragon is enough, it will be countless times more powerful than a high-temperature furnace. There is no smoke pollution, and there is no need for physical fuel. The idea of a moment made him overjoyed. There must be a lot of volcanic glass distributed on Black Horse Island. By condensing the magic of these fire dragons together and building a brick kiln with volcanic glass, bricks can be continuously fired. Pottery and porcelain were almost ready to be fired. It is said that firing bricks and ceramics requires different temperatures. It is completely possible to separate the magic of the fire dragon to achieve temperature control. The magic of a whole fire dragon can ignite a volcano, and part of the fire dragon magic can be used to burn bricks. His thoughts diverged, and more ideas emerged. Not only can I bake bricks, but I can also use the small fire dragon to make a stove that burns steam and then invent a steam engine. It seems that the steam engine is a little difficult, but isn't it just a matter of minutes to boil water and a hot brick bed? This is not rewarding me with a mineral vein. This is rewarding me with a bunch of energy. Looking at the nearly 40 smoke missions that have appeared, the value of volcanic glass is second only to space gems. If properly used and developed, it can even surpass space gems. He forcibly suppressed his excitement, stared at the flying fire dragon, and clenched his fists. Chapter 215. List doesn't know how dragons infect beasts in World of Warcraft, but the conditions for infection are definitely very limited. Otherwise, the Grand Duke and King with dragons would have dragon creatures all over the country. The fact is that the Sapphire Grand Duke only has one kind of dragon horse, that is, the blue blood horse, which is so precious that even the blood is not willing to leak out. So, from this point of view, the acquisition of dragon blood should be quite difficult. It's just that he had a previous inference that the cows on the dairy farm were likely to have acquired dragon blood and mutated into dragon cows. This made him feel that dragon blood was not very difficult to obtain. The invisible dragon strolled around the dairy farm and was infected with dragon blood. So is this difficult or not? Can the magic of the fire dragon infect the blood of the dragon? If so, what animal should I infect with dragon blood? There are already dragon horses and black blood horses, and there are probably dragon cows and cows. Other chickens, ducks, geese, pigs, sheep, and monkeys do not seem to have much value in infection. Maybe I can infect Dosin and infect Dosin into an intermediate dragon in World of Warcraft? He thought the idea was good. Dosin was worth cultivating. Of course, it's just an idea. The research on the fire dragon magic is still in its preliminary stage. Before the research is thorough, it is best to temporarily use it as firewood in the kiln. Otherwise, with the explosive effect of the fire dragon magic, Dosin will be roasted instead of infected into a dragon beast. After determining the location of the small fire dragon, List picked up the fragments of volcanic glass and returned to the castle. The volcanic glass that Marcus brought back was not much, but it was not little either, and it was all piled up in his gem space. If the volcanic glass is smashed, it can probably condense a small magic dragon the size of a wash basin. Somehow, List always likes to use the size of a wash basin as an adjective. What he thought was to first have the volcanic glass carved, spliced, and made into a jar. It is convenient to extract and store the fire dragon magic at any time. This magical dragon magic is very valuable, and a little waste is a huge loss. I have to find the crystal craftsman Brad to work for me. I should find an opportunity to abduct him to the flower town and have him work for me. It was a pity that craftsmen like Brad did not have to worry about food and drink with their skills. They could live a good life and were unwilling to settle down in a small rural town. It had been snowing all morning. List, wearing a cloak, went back and forth between the castle and the wasteland where Charmander was, trying to do various research. However, he was not a magician, and his research methods were still too few. No matter how hard he tried, he did not find much useful information. The only thing worth affirming is that volcanic glass can indeed block the magic of the fire dragon. He found that when the small fire dragon hit the volcanic glass, it would immediately fall apart, but it would not cause an explosion. The cause of the explosion was a physical reaction caused by the fire dragon's magic coming into contact with other magic of different attributes. Without the stimulation of magic power, the little fire dragon could maintain its fire dragon form and burn its surroundings, as if it was a continuous source of heat, inexhaustible. Within 50 centimeters of Charmander's movement, the ice and snow melted and the ground dried up, having been burned to scorched earth and chapped. A mysterious fire dragon. I don't know how many years it has been dead, but its magic still has such extraordinary power. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would believe it? He sighed and thought of kind of Earth technology. Doesn't this look like controllable nuclear fusion? Controllable nuclear fusion is commonly known as an artificial sun. Whoever masters controllable nuclear fusion will master endless energy. He even believes that all dragons are equivalent to artificial suns with a lifespan of 1,000 years. Continuous production of energy. The snow on the ground was roasted by the small fire dragon, constantly melting and vaporizing, forming a strange landscape in the heavy snow. List's thoughts returned from the artificial sun, and he could not help but think, if I dig a pool, can I make a hot spring? Winter and hot springs are a perfect match. He couldn't resist the impulse and immediately decided, I want to make a hot spring in the castle, in the bathroom. The bathroom had a large bathtub separated into a small area and put in the small fire dragon, which is equivalent to constantly adding hot water. There is no need for servants to bring hot water from downstairs. He quickly returned to the castle and designed the construction plan for the indoor hot spring. He was ready to implement the hot spring within a week. By the time he drew the first draft of the hot spring bathtub, Gort had already taken the serfs back to Flower Town. Unfortunately, 7 serfs died due to illness and cold on the way. Including the previous children, only 829 people came to Flower Town, of which 142 were craftsmen. It was a pity that people froze to death, but considering the weather, List could only sigh. In any case, with the addition of more than 800 serfs, the total population of Flower Town finally broke through the 3,000 mark. In terms of population alone, it is no longer a barren town, but a medium-sized town. To reach the level of the wealthy town of Falcon Town with a population of more than 4,000, it is necessary to continue the slave trade. This damned weather, it's going to freeze me in an ice cream. After the greeting, Gort immediately complained. If it wasn't for the sudden drop in temperature, the dead serfs would have had the chance to come to Flower Town alive and see the glory of the night. Don't complain, work hard for a few more days, and try to properly settle these serfs. There will be gin at the dinner. Of course, this is my job. His complaints were more to ask for credit from List. After List promised to drink gin at the dinner, he immediately became spirited. He shouted at the town's officials and clerks, making the already messy scene even more messy. Then he switched to the field, showing his management ability, redistributing tasks to each official, specifying the work of clerks and patrols, and ensuring that no one can be lazy. It has to be said that as an aristocrat, he has some experience in how to command his subordinates. The castle's servants also participated in the arrangement of the new serfs. The main thing was that the kitchen would make a lot of simple food for the serfs to fill their stomachs. Mrs. Morrison and the maids, in their spare time, would sew clothes and give them to the serfs to avoid the cold. At this time, Jesse led the team and several serving men assistants, carrying a few buckets of flour, beans, and minced meat mixed with food, walked along Dawson Avenue in the direction of the town. When passing by Dawson's kennel, Jesse said hello cheerfully. Good afternoon, Dawson. Dawson has always been dismissive of these servants. It is only loyal to List. But after Jesse said hello, Dawson suddenly poked its head out of the kennel, sniffed with its dog nose, looked around, and seemed to have found something. However, it only saw a few familiar humans. They're just humble servants responsible for shoveling its poop. So, shaking its head, it shrank back into the kennel. The weather is cold, and the kennel with the quilt is still warm. Chapter 2:16. The footprints continued to the castle gate and then disappeared. No one noticed this, including the retainer knight patrolling around the castle in the heavy snow. In the castle kitchen, Mrs. Abby's voice was so loud that it could even be heard in the hall. The butler, Carter, was wiping the lamps and decorations on the walls. When he heard the voice, He unconsciously shrugged his shoulders. She is always so rude. Why can you tolerate her? Thomas said sarcastically as he tidied up the stools in the hall. Carter did not like Thomas, not only because Thomas despised his authority as a butler, but also because Thomas always liked to speak ill of others. He replied seriously, because she is Mrs. Abby, because the master loves to eat the delicious food she makes, and the servants also like it. I think so too. If not for her cooking skills, she would have been fired by the master. That's not necessarily true. The master is a noble aristocrat with benevolent qualities. He will provide Mrs. Abby with a new position. The master is too kind to the servants. In my opinion, Jesse, Tom, and Irene should be driven away. They're just wastes. It is best not to let the master hear this. Everyone is doing their own thing. They did not make any mistakes and should not be called wastes. Thomas sneered. Anyone can do better than them. Just as he said that, Mrs. Abby's soprano voice suddenly came from the kitchen. Damn, Irene, where are the vegetables I told you to wash? If you delay the master's dinner, I will kiss your ass with my boots. Then came Irene's loud refutation. I was washing the beans. You order me to do so. Oh, is that so? Can't you be a bit faster and wash the beans and vegetables? Do you know how many beans there are? Maggie, tell Mrs. Abby that I think her eyes are already old. Heavens, are you rebelling, Irene? The quarrel in the kitchen provided Thomas with material. He snorted disdainfully. This is what you said? Everyone is doing their own thing. The fact is, wastes are wastes. Carter ignored him and said, Have you set up the tables and chairs upstairs? Tonight's banquet will be brought forward, so don't delay it. Aren't Tom and Jesse going to set up the tables and chairs? They're responsible for delivering food to town, so I'll leave this task to you. Thomas sneered, but still went upstairs. He was just a valet and needed to listen to the butler's orders. However, the quarrel in the kitchen did not stop. Mrs. Abby was still in the hairdryer state, constantly roaring, while Irene was still angrily refuting Mrs. Abby. But the work in the kitchen was orderly, and it did not fall into a state of stagnation because of the quarrel. Even the little maid interns were doing their jobs as if nothing had happened. Everyone was used to the strange relationship between Mrs. Abby and Irene, sometimes like enemies, sometimes like mother and daughter. Maggie was used to it. She took the broom and was responsible for sweeping up the rotten leaves on the ground, which could be given to the serfs to feed the chickens. Maggie, do you want to eat? As soon as the quarrel stopped, Irene, who was responsible for washing the vegetables, suddenly pulled out a handful of shriveled peanuts from the corner and extended them in front of Maggie as if nothing had happened. No, Sister Irene, I have some. I haven't eaten yet. She also pulled out a handful of shriveled peanuts from the corner. There was a peanut processing workshop in town which would purchase a lot of peeled peanuts every day. The plump peanuts were suitable for making various peanut snacks and peanut butter, which would be sold by the caravans. The remaining shriveled peanuts would be divided out and given to the castle servants as snacks. Working in the castle, there were certainly some benefits that ordinary people could not enjoy. Irene put the peanuts in her pocket and said, Peanuts are the best when fried. After the banquet, Mrs. Abby will leave the kitchen and we can fry the peanuts ourselves. Mrs. Abby is not allowed. It's fine as long as she doesn't find out. Don't worry, I will clean the pot. She won't find out. But, Mr. Carter, if he finds out, he will punish you. It doesn't matter. It's just fried peanuts in the pot. Mr. Carter will not blame me. He, like the master, never mistreats us servants, even if I'm just a kitchen maid. Well, okay. Maggie licked her lips. After eating fried peanuts once, she liked this delicious snack. It was much more delicious than the dinner the servants ate every day. Bathroom. Liz stood next to the bathtub, constantly measuring the area of the bathtub and bathroom with a tape measure. After collecting the data, he went straight to the study, took out thick bass paper, and began to write and draw on it to design the so-called bathtub hot spring. The small fire dragon was not a safe energy source. It must be used to heat the water while also doing a good job of safety protection. This was a brain-consuming design. The blacksmiths and carpenters of Flower Town certainly did not have the brains and insight to design a bathtub hot spring. It seems to be one of the 3 laws of thermodynamics, or something else. It stipulates 3 properties of boiling water: thermal convection, thermal conduction, and thermal radiation. Thermal radiation is not used for the time being. Thermal conduction and thermal convection are the most appropriate methods. In terms of thermal conduction, as long as a certain part of the bathtub is heated, the water in the entire bathtub can be heated. Thinking about it, he felt a little confused. The content of junior high school physics was basically returned to the teacher. But he knew one thing: whether it was heating from the bottom of the bathtub, letting the water convect so that the hot water rises and the cold water sinks, or from the side of the bathtub, so that the water temperature continues to pass to the other side, there needs to be a water tank isolated from the bathtub to heat the small fire dragon. I can't keep the small fire dragon heating. After the bath, I have to put the small fire dragon away, so the volcanic glass jar must be immediately engraved by a craftsman. How to release the bubbles inside during the engraving is a troublesome thing. He put one hand on the table and raised the 2 legs of the chair in boredom. Then he picked up a piece of volcanic glass. Casting magic eyes, he was ready to observe the fire dragon magic in the bubble and think about how to cooperate with the craftsman to collect the fire dragon magic. However, when the magic eyes was cast, his eyes fell on the position near the window of the study, and he was startled. With a shake of his hand, the volcanic glass was thrown away and the chair fell down. Fortunately, he was flexible, twisted his body, restrained his falling body, and stood firm on the table. Then he forced his eyes to move to the volcanic glass on the ground instead of looking at the window, because there was a figure made of magic leaning against the wall. It could be seen that this was a woman with a full chest. Her hands were crossed over her chest, and her eyes seemed to be staring at Liszt. The unexpected appearance of the magic humanoid in the study that he thought was absolutely safe could definitely scare people to death. Fortunately, Liszt used the awkward fall to hide his surprise. Without disturbing the magic figure, the other party just changed her posture and continued to lean against the wall, staring at Liszt. "What is this? What is this thing?" Liszt bent down and carefully picked up the volcanic glass, forcing himself to calm down and think about what the sudden appearance of the magic figure was. He waited until he straightened up. The panic after the fright had quickly calmed down, and his brain recovered its wits. He immediately thought of the reward of the smoke mission, the thief who spied on the Lord. Chapter 217. A Thief. A female thief with a big chest. A thief who knew invisibility or similar magic. Standing by the window of the study, leaning against the wall, peeping at him. After the initial panic, Liszt had begun to think about how to deal with it. With his understanding of smoke missions, or the understanding of the fate represented by the smoke dragon, as long as this matter was handled well, he would be able to reap rewards. After all, the thief's peeping appeared in the form of a smoke mission reward. But how should I deal with it? Should I directly expose the thief's disguise? He casually picked up the chair and prepared to sit down again. That's not very good. It's too embarrassing to directly expose it. Do I have to use a honey trap? I have many advantages, and being handsome is one of them. The other party was a female thief. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, her figure was very graceful. It was barely worth it for him to use the honey trap. How do I use the honey trap? Actually, I was already using my charm all the time. My handsomeness was something that was natural. What I need to do now is to do a good job internally. It is very easy to conquer a woman's good impression. He had begun to fantasize. The female thief was attracted by his handsomeness and temperament, and directly escaped from the shadows and confessed everything to him. Speaking of which, this idea was quite wretched, but the beauty trap was definitely something he could think of. In the current situation, it was the best plan. What woman could resist a man who was not lacking in identity, appearance, and temperament? Not to mention the existence of a thief, which was classified as a mouse. However, just as he sat down and was about to show his aristocratic temperament, a slightly hoarse woman's voice suddenly came into his ear. I didn't expect someone to be able to see through my figure in a rural castle on such an island. It was the female thief who was speaking. List almost didn't react. He hadn't used the honey trap yet, and the other party had already fallen for it. However, he reacted quickly and immediately stood up from the chair vigilantly. He looked around and whispered, "Who is it? Who is talking?" "Baron, your acting is not very good. Worse than the burlesque actors I saw in Coral City." The magic on the female thief flowed, and the next moment, her body slowly appeared. Some kind of magic similar to invisibility had been lifted. Tattered leather armor, a sword as tall as a person, messy hair, and a tight chest. She was wearing a veil that covered most of her face, revealing only a pair of bright eyes. This kind of dressing reminded List of the villains that often appeared in Knight Rider novels. Mercenaries. Mercenaries were the middle class of society, and most of them were fallen knights. They would become mercenaries and work for lords and merchants in exchange for rewards. Their reputation was very bad, because most of the mercenaries were notorious for robbing, killing, and so on. Compared to the rats in the middle and lower levels, they only had one more level of legitimacy. List also knew that the slave trade was inseparable from mercenaries. The knight belonged to the charge on the battlefield, and mercenaries were best at capturing serfs. The female mercenary was honest with him. It disrupted List's train of thought. However, he was an adult after all. His ability to remain calm in the face of danger was still passable. Touching the red blood sword on the edge of the table, his mood completely calmed down. As an elite Earth Knight, his strength was strong enough. Unless the other party was a Sky Knight level mercenary, the red blood sword would be ruthless. Was my performance really that bad? I think the coherent movements and expressions just now were very natural. List smiled, showing his handsome side. "This uninvited lady, please sit down. Would you like something to drink? Red wine, coffee, or milk tea?" The handsome man plan continued. The female mercenary sat down calmly. She was obviously a thief lurking in, but she acted as comfortable as the owner. "I'm not thirsty right now. If you want to drink something to calm down, please help yourself." List was a little puzzled. "Do I look nervous?" "In fact, I'm very relaxed now. Your performance is indeed better than many people, but there are still a lot of flaws." The female mercenary crossed her legs. Her clothes were very rough, but her trousers were tied with strips of cloth and covered with knee pads, perfectly showing off her slender, straight legs. With the Earth Knight's control of his body, he will not sit down in his chair. List suddenly realized, so I was exposed from the beginning. In fact, I'm more curious about how you saw through my invisibility. I have sneaked into many castles. Except for being exposed in front of a Sky Knight, I have never been seen through by an Earth Knight. Are you a professional thief? List did not answer. He would not reveal the secret of the magic eye. The female mercenary also asked, "Do you want to arrest me? Sneaking into my castle and spying in my study. Don't you think you have offended the authority of a lord and the sacred legitimacy of the territory?" The lord has absolute control over the territory, which is the knight system followed by all countries. I walked in from the castle gate and have been standing in front of the window. The female mercenary finished and added in a relaxed tone, "And I don't think there's a problem with offending a baron. The number of baron I killed could probably fill this study." It was an ordinary sentence, as if it was just a small talk. However, List could feel that the temperature in the room had dropped by a few degrees when she said that. He even had goosebumps all over his body. He didn't even doubt whether what she said was true or not, because there was an air of matter-of-fact in her words. It could also be that the other party's acting was just too good. He raised his eyebrows and kept his smile unchanged. "So, tell me why you came to a rural town in the heavy snow. There must be a need. I was out to kill the rural lord who sells serfs and take another person away." Probably feeling that everything was under control, the female mercenary was very direct. "But seeing that you have not done much evil in the town, killing you will inevitably involve innocent civilians. I decided to change my plan and take only one person away." It sounded like he was lucky to have escaped. But List didn't think that with his hard work and the strength of an elite Earth Knight, the red blood sword, and the magic eye, he would be easily killed. The total amount of magic power in the other party's body, in his view, was not outstanding, far from the level of a Sky Knight. Moreover, looking at her attire and the distribution of her magic power, it was obvious that she cultivated chi and was not a mage. Perhaps she had relied on stealth to kill many Earth Knights in the past, which gave her inflated self-confidence. While thinking, he responded, "Who do you want to take away?" As soon as he asked this, a light flashed in his mind, and he suddenly thought of a person, the little maid Maggie, who was an intern in the kitchen. In the reward of the smoke mission, the kindness of the serf Maggie was rewarded, which made him think that there must be a follow-up mission involving Maggie. Now, the sudden arrival of the female mercenary made him connect the two missions. The thief who spied on the Lord must have come from Maggie. And List had probably guessed the identity of the other party. It was recorded in the serf registration that Maggie had a runaway mage sister. Chapter 2:18. If it was a thief who suddenly appeared, even if it was a woman, List would find an opportunity to kill her. This kind of person who threatened his life, if he didn't get rid of her, would he really want the other party to fall in love with him? But as a reward for the smoke mission, killing the other party was tantamount to throwing away the reward directly. After all, the smoke mission had already given a hint, serf Maggie. The trainee maid, Maggie, was the key to get the reward, the key to mastering the mercenary or sorceress in front of him. As for how to open the treasure chest with the key, it was certainly not to capture the little maid Maggie and threaten the other party. The best way should be with love. Maggie has formed a contract with Mrs. Harriet of the grocery store. This mercenary is equivalent to half of Flower Town's people. Since it was one of his own, List's mood suddenly became cheerful. He began to think about how to play the cards in his hand, Maggie, and his personal reputation. At this time, the maid had already said who she wanted to take away. "I want to take away a maid in the castle." Does Baron agree? A maid in the castle? List pretended to think for a moment and said, "There are 16 maids in the castle. Which one do you want to take away?" "Irene. Irene Four Fingers." List glanced at the maid in surprise. He didn't expect the other party to play with him. If he hadn't guessed it earlier, he would have been fooled. "Why do you want to take Irene away? Give me a reason." "It's just a maid." "What reason is needed?" "Baron, if you want to see if my sword is sharp, I don't mind letting you know. My sword isn't rusty either." List did not give in and looked at the maid's bright eyes. He was half acting, and the other half was confidence. There was Dosin, the red blood sword, and the elite Earth Knight. As long as the other party was not a Sky Knight, they would not be able to take advantage of him. With confidence, they would be able to perform with peace of mind. They would be able to show the Lord's love for his subjects, show their tough side, and show off the noble image that the people at the bottom of the hierarchy expected. Under the Knight system, everyone was equal. A brave and benevolent lord was the embodiment of justice. The female mercenary's tattered leather armor showed that she was undoubtedly at the bottom of society. After a while, sure enough, she took a step back. "Irene is my sister. Is this reason enough?" "Your sister?" List smiled. "If it's true, I'll call her over and confirm it with you. I'm not opposed to family reunions. In fact, you can come and see me as her relative." Irene applied to be a maid in Coral City. "The choice to stay or leave is in her own hands. She doesn't know that I exist." "Sorry, this reason doesn't hold water. Irene's parents are in Coral City. They farm for Tulip Castle. I don't think she will have a thief, mercenary, or magician sister. So I have to wait for Irene's confirmation before I can let you take her away." "What if I have to take her away?" "It seems that my actions have caused you to misunderstand." List suddenly pressed his hand on the hilt of the red blood sword and sternly said, "The people work for the Lord, and the Lord protects the safety of the people. This is the Knight's glory that I believe in. I won't allow you to take away anyone from Flower Town." This action was full of momentum, and the lines were generous and powerful. Coupled with his handsome face, his sense of justice was bursting. Of course, there was a slight suspicion of using too much force. Such a righteous lord seemed a bit empty. On the opposite chair, the mercenary's bright eyes flickered. For a moment, She did not respond to List's righteous rebuke. Until List felt embarrassed, she slowly said, "You are different from the lords I killed, Baron. I will stay in Flower Town for a few days to see the difference between you and the other lords." Then she stood up. She was about 175 meters tall. List narrowed his eyes. He felt that whether he let her go or stopped her from going out, it was not a very good solution. The key point was that he could not estimate the strength of the other party. Anyway, she would not be weak. If her strength was low, the smoke mission did not need to be so serious, and she would be counted as a reward. When she walked to the door of the study and was about to open the door, List got up and followed. "I don't know why you came for Irene, but I must warn you, don't try to hurt Irene. Don't have any bad intentions in Flower Town, and leave your name. Swan." The mercenary smiled, not caring about List's threat. It was not a standard female name. It was probably an alias, List guessed. Thomas, who was decorating the living room, saw List coming out with a mercenary. He was stunned and then stepped forward to greet. "Master." List said, "Thomas, you send this uninvited guest, Ms. Swan, out of the castle. In addition, inform Consultant Gort that she can find a new house in town for Ms. Swan to live in." Feeling that this was too deliberate, he added, "The money for board and lodging is the same as those foreign merchants." Although Thomas did not know why there was a woman dressed like this in the castle, he respectfully accepted the order. "Yes, master. Miss Swan, please come with me." Swan followed Thomas out of the castle. Butler Carter asked with doubt, "Master, this Miss Swan? I have not seen her enter the castle. I have been wiping the dust in the hall." She came in over the wall. List stood at the door and watched Swan's back disappear into the distance. "I will tell you about her origin when the time is right. As for now, you should care more about the servants in the castle, especially the maids. If they have any grievances, solve them as soon as possible." As expected, Carter stopped asking. "As you wish, master." "By the way, Mr. Carter, can you ask Irene to come to my study? I have something to ask her." Since the mercenary said that she was here for Irene, he had to show his sincerity. Irene hurried to the study. "Master, are you looking for me?" "Irene, how many brothers and sisters do you have in your family?" "I have 2 younger brothers." "No sister? Or cousin?" "No, master." "Are you sure you don't have one? For example, a sister who was given to someone else when she was a child?" "I don't know about that, but when I was born, my mother was only 17 years old. There shouldn't be another sister." So the possibility that Swan was Irene's sister was basically ruled out. She was just playing mind games. List's heart settled, and his tone became gentler. "How was the work in the kitchen?" "Everything is fine, master." "That's good. If there is anything, you can report it directly to Mr. Carter. As a sister, you should take care of the little maid in the kitchen and not let them suffer." "Of course I will." The conversation ended, and Irene was sent away. List carefully sorted out his response to Swan's encounter and felt that there were several details that had not been handled well, and there were some flaws, but overall, his response was pretty good. There was no abrupt enthusiasm, no deliberate hostility. The courage and kindness that should be shown were also shown, and they were basically like a spring breeze. Chapter 219. Swan, the mercenary, will stay in Flower Town and observe for a few days. This is a good sign, indicating that she has developed a good impression of Flower Town and List. The next few days are the time for the good impression to be fixed. Of course, it is also possible that the good impression will turn into a bad impression, but the probability is small. List is confident about this. Now Flower Town is clean, hygienic. The roads are spacious. The civilians have houses to live in, clothes to wear, food to eat, and even a little surplus. The patrol is no longer a rogue organization. The security is not closed at night. At least there will be no theft. Although the town is rural and not prosperous, but under the governance of more than half a year, there's been a lot of improvement. This will undoubtedly add a lot of good impressions. Selling serfs is indeed disgraceful, but basically the aristocracy will sell slaves, not me. Moreover, the serfs have come to Flower Town, and their lives have not been wronged. They have been assigned houses, clothes, food, and fields, and their quality of life may have improved. This does not add points, but it also does not lose points. This is the social system. The mercenary swan claimed to have killed many Baron, and it was difficult to tell whether it was true or not. But she certainly understood that what List did was already relatively good among the aristocracy. And most importantly, Maggie has a good life in Flower Town and has a new family. She and Mrs. Harriet formed a contract mother and daughter. It was a stroke of genius. Thinking of this, List felt that there was no reason not to keep the well-built mercenary. Contract mother and daughter are no different from real mother and daughter in law and morality. If the mercenary swan wants to take Maggie away, she must first break up the mother-daughter relationship between them. But the point is Maggie willing? List has been paying attention to Maggie and knows that Mrs. Harriet really treats Maggie like a daughter. The little maid's heart has long been melted. Maggie is not a cold little girl, and if she knows how to be grateful, she certainly does not want to hurt Mrs. Harriet. So, I have to secretly send someone to remind Mrs. Harriet, and at the critical moment, let her keep Maggie, and then use Maggie's mouth to keep the mercenary. Irene also has to continue to strengthen, so that the maids feel the love of the castle and the atmosphere of a big family. Finally, he made the most important decision based on his many failed attempts to woo a girl. Women are emotional. Perhaps there are countless benefits in Flower Town, but the mercenaries may not appreciate it. However, a warm action to buy her heart might change her mind. That night, only Gort and Isaiah came to the banquet. The others continued to be responsible for arranging new serfs. Without waiting for the dishes to be served, Gort asked, "Sir, what is Ms. Swan's status? Is it appropriate for me to put her in a new house in the aristocratic district? Perhaps an enemy, perhaps a friend. It all depends on her choice." List did not directly reveal the other party's identity. Instead, he said, "Consultant Gort, please tell Carl and Ron that the patrol team should pay more attention to her movements. Don't let her get close to the flame mushroom workshop, the soap workshop, and the wine workshop. The worm protection team must protect the worm stalks, especially those in the Garden of Thorns." "You confuse me." Gort shrugged. "However, as you wish, I will tell Carl and Rom." List said to Isaiah, "When the new serfs arrive, clothing, food, and housing should be arranged properly. I will have the caravan urgently purchase a batch of quilts and cotton-padded clothes. Don't be afraid to spend money. It is most important to take care of the serfs' lives. Let the serfs feel the warmth of Flower Town in winter." Gort patted Isaiah on the shoulder and blinked. "Yes, let the serfs feel the warmth of home. And Miss Swan, she should see this scene and feel the warmth of Flower Town." Isaiah was not a fool and quickly understood. Of course, Flower Town has a benevolent lord. For all civilians, this is a warm home. List smiled and raised his glass. "Cheers! Cheers! Sleep at night." Using the magic eye, List carefully examined the castle to make sure there were no mercenaries lurking. List brought Dos into the castle hall and let him sleep in the hall. She watched as Carter locked the castle gate with her own eyes. Then he bolted the bedroom door and lay down on the bed. He couldn't sleep, and he was thinking about the mercenary swan. He had mixed feelings about this thief who spies on the Lord. Because of the smoke mission, he naturally felt that subduing the other party was in line with the meaning of the reward. But the information revealed in Swan's words did not affect his senses. The other party claimed to have killed many Baron, which was clearly on the opposite side of the aristocracy. List was also an aristocrat, and his ass determined his head. He would never allow anyone who tried to shake the aristocratic rule to exist. Swan is Maggie's sister, so she should be from the Eagle Kingdom, and the one she killed should be the Baron of the Eagle Kingdom. I hope so. If she killed someone from the Sapphire Kingdom, then I should never let her live. In fact, I was still too hasty. He turned over and continued to think. I should first investigate her background and then decide whether to subdue her. The smoke mission has affected my judgment. I should restrain this dependence. He thought that the smoke mission was a conspiracy of a behind-the-scenes manipulator. Such a manipulator obviously could not resist. But now that he guessed that the smoke mission was the product of the smoke dragon, it was just the control of fate which gave him an independent choice. People's fate should be in their own hands, not to be a puppet. If it's good for me, take it, and if it's bad for me, throw it away. His restless mind calmed down little by little. No matter how beautiful Swan's face is under the veil, as long as she's not in my interest, she must not be left. Even if because of Maggie, she will not endanger Flower Town and my rule, she must be sent away. Of course, these were all assumptions. They had only met for the first time, and it was difficult to judge whether what she said was true or false. Her identity and background were also difficult to guess. For Maggie, her sister had gone to learn magic. Judging from Swan's dress, she was a mercenary and cultivated chi. But she also knew invisibility. Although the principle was not clear, it should be a kind of magic. Moreover, the description in the smoke mission was that she was called a thief. So whether she was a knight or a magician, it was unknown. Whether she was a mercenary or a thief, it was also unknown. Touching the red blood sword at the bedside, List had completely calmed down. Since she is here, I can't decide whether she will come to the Flower Town or not, but I must decide whether she can stay or not. Chapter 220. Swan strolled through the streets of Flower Town. The snow had stopped last night. The road had been shoveled out of the snow, revealing the gravel road on the ground. Compared with the stone road she had seen in big cities, this kind of gravel road was very simple. But for a small town, it was very bold to be able to lay a gravel road. No matter which country, most small towns had dirt roads. The patrols, with a smile, maintained the order of the new serfs and began to distribute clothes. The clothes were thick, cotton-padded clothes, without cutting corners. After a while, the serfs began to transport the prepared food to the residential area and provided it to the new serfs through the team organized by the town officials. The food was plentiful. Although it was only beans and black bread, everyone was given a kind of shellfish. She had inquired about it. It was seafood, a delicious food given to Lord List by the sea. Last night, she tasted the seafood and found it tasted good. It was said that Flower Town relied on seafood to let everyone live a full life. From the color on the faces of the civilians, she knew it was true. Compared with the dishes common to the serfs in the countryside, the serfs here had ruddy faces. They wore thick cotton-padded clothes, smiled when working, and received a copper or two as a salary. It was hard to believe that such a life would appear in a small rural town. Not long after, she had arrived at the wheat settlement. Chickens crowed one after another in the settlement, and she could see the serfs taking out the leftover breadcrumbs and some wheat bran to feed the big and small chickens. She also passed a pig farm with more than a dozen fat pigs. Everything showed that this was a rich town. Not only was the castle rich, the town rich, but even the village farm was rich. A very quiet village. She suddenly remembered her hometown, also in a small town, a village farm like the wheat settlement, but more dilapidated. The local lord's taxes were too heavy and excessive, resulting in serfs not having enough to eat. Her family also did not have enough to eat. Her parents planned to marry her to a crippled old man in the village. She was only 15 years old at that time. The crippled old man was in his 50s, his folds could catch flies, and he looked like he would die at any time. After mustering up her courage, she ran away from home early the next morning. Just as she was about to leave the village, she happened to hear serfs working in the fields at the entrance of the village singing their hometown songs. My hometown is in this village. I was born and raised here. Don't be fooled by the size of this village. At that moment, her tears flowed freely, but she had no regrets. For years passed in the blink of an eye. Too many things remained the same, but the people had changed. When she finally had the ability to rewrite her own future, she heard that the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom was going to war with the Eagle Kingdom again. So she embarked on the journey back home, ready to pick up her family. However, when he returned to his hometown, it was already a scene of devastation. Her hometown had not been destroyed in the war. Instead, it had been slaughtered by a group of mercenaries. Her parents' corpses had already been eaten by wild dogs. However, She had also received a clue that her little sister was still alive. So she chased him all the way from the Kingdom of Eagle to the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. He had finally found his sister in this remote village on the island. "Good morning, Captain Swan." Suddenly, a stuttering greeting pulled Swan back to reality from her memories. She turned her head and saw that it was a little slave girl. It seemed that on the ship, the little slave girl fell down, and she took her to get a meal. "It's you." The little slave girl had changed into cotton-padded clothes. They were a little big, but they looked very warm. Her face had also been washed. Although there was still a trace of malnutrition, her spirit had recovered. After the serpentine greeting, she immediately changed to Wind Whisper, and her tone became lively. "Captain Swan, are you the Lord of Flower Town?" Swan then asked. "Do you like Flower Town?" "Well, I like Flower Town. Mr. and Mrs. Brown are good people. I also met Onija, who, like me, is a serf who came by ship from another continent. She has been practicing Qi with the knight." "Do you know Qi?" "Ah, a big man like you must have practiced Qi. Female slaves can also practice Qi." "Yes, Onija asked her instructor, Lord Rom. All girls can go to class. In a few days, I can also practice Qi." "Well, I want to be as powerful as Captain Swan. Don't you want to go home?" "Home?" A trace of confusion appeared on the little slave girl's face. She lowered her head and seemed to think of something. "But Leah has no home." But soon, she raised her head again. Mr. and Mrs. Brown said that Leah should make Flower Town her home. Swan was stunned, then smiled and said, "Then make it home." Eating breakfast, List habitually called out the smoke mission. Although he had to restrain his dependence on the smoke mission was really useful. He couldn't help but think about the smoke mission every day. If you can catch the tail of fate, you must try your best to pull it. Keep the opportunity, don't waste it. However, this time, the smoke mission has changed for a long time. The ethereal serpentine is no longer the familiar words, but the serpentine that only appeared once. The mission has changed. Immediately, a new smoke mission was issued. Mission: in a snow-covered flower town, workers work and sweat every day, but they can't get enough hot water to wash. It is easy to catch a cold. The Lord should take this into account and build a bathhouse for men and women. Reward: a new variety of flame mushroom. The monkey hasn't been bought yet. The mission was obviously not completed, but now it has changed. List recalled the mission of the Diary of the Descendants of Philip's Sons. He did not promote the contract between Phil and Jesse until now, but he searched Phil's leathersmith shop and got the diary that was supposed to be the reward in advance, and the mission changed immediately. This time, it is likely that the same reason has led to the change of the mission. The smoke mission prompt says that the mission has changed, not that the mission has failed. Is the reward for my thief already in place? He thought of the possibility that Swan might already have someone in her heart, but he felt that the progress was too fast. He was very confused about this mercenary who could make herself invisible. She must have value, and her invisibility alone is worth subduing. But there are also hidden threats. Killing aristocrats and unknown origins have violated his taboo, so he was ready for a protracted war. He never expected that the other party would surrender so quickly. It even made him sigh. "Alas, I thought it was a guardian boss, but I didn't expect it to be just a cutscene animation. Is it because you are flustered, or is my charm too high?" He picked up Mrs. Abby's new invention of steamed bread, smeared it with beef mince and mustard, and took a bite. It's dry and hard. It's not as soft as a real steamed bread, and it needs to be improved. Whether Swan has someone in her heart or not, the original plan should continue, and the investigation of her background should be accelerated. The construction of the 2 bathhouses must start immediately. I just designed the bathtub hot spring, and the smoke mission keeps pace with the times, letting me build the bathhouse. Chapter 2:21. Riding Dosen. Arriving at the open space of the Barley settlement, List inspected children of all ages and taught them how to take night training lessons. He did not ride Black Dragon because Dosen could give him a sense of security. It can add to the powerful image of the Lord, imprinting a noble brand in the hearts of these children. The Lord riding intermediate world of Warcraft is incredibly powerful. It is a very lucky thing to be able to farm for the Lord. Letting one of his deputies continue to guide the training of the girls, Rum saluted List. "Good day, sir." "Good day, Rum." Rum then began to introduce the training progress of this group of girls. The talented and untalented girls can basically be distinguished from the training. The so-called talent, one is physical fitness and the other is psychological quality. Talented children would definitely be tall and sturdy, and they would be able to endure hardships and work hard. As for the issue of IQ, the importance is secondary. After all, List is only training a group of female serfs who can farm and do heavy work. He is not really training female knight. Rom, pay more attention to the health of the girls. Train in the snow, don't let them catch cold. After sweating, take them back immediately. Rom replied, "There is a stove in the lounge next to it. Every time we rest, we will let them go in to warm themselves." List nodded. Although it is summer training and winter training, but after all, they are little girls and the training can't be too hard. He thought of a plan and said to Rom, "This wasteland is still too simple. I plan to use this wasteland, referred to as the Night Square, for night training in the future." Rom supports the Lord's decision. With a dedicated night square, both instructors and children can enjoy convenience and make training more professional. With a cafeteria and classroom, cultural classes will also be held here in the future. List thought further ahead. He not only wanted serfs to farm, but also wanted literate clerks to do paperwork. In the future, the development of Black Horse Island will require a lot of talents. It is difficult to guarantee the availability of talents by buying, so it is better to start training now. After talking about the construction of the Night Square, he soon turned his attention to Maggie, who was training with the girls. The 9-year-old maid, Maggie, was very serious and meticulous in her movements. Last night, Liz called old Granddad over and chatted with him for a long time. The topic was mainly about Maggie. He asked old Granddad to get in touch with Harriet's family, vaguely revealing that the Lord appreciates Maggie. The way the contract mother and daughter get along is very good. I hope you can continue to love each other, and so on. All in all, it was a hint to the Harriet family that Maggie was indispensable. Then they naturally knew how to keep Maggie. If Swan wanted to take Maggie away by force, this would be the foreshadowing. If Swan did not want to, the foreshadowing would not be a loss. If List wanted to expel Swan, Maggie would stay to prevent retaliation. He was watching Maggie. Suddenly, out of the corner of List's eye, he saw Swan coming over. He turned his head and nodded faintly to Swan. It was a greeting, not enthusiastic but very natural. Swan came straight over. As she approached, Dosen sniffed the air with his nose and suddenly growled at Swan. If it weren't for List's soothing, he would have pounced on her directly. Intermediate world of Warcraft Flying Dust Dog, a rare mutated bloodline. Baron's territory is full of surprises. Swan said, not seeming to be afraid of Dosen. Some of her actions were deliberately mystifying, but it was hard for List to distinguish. You will naturally reap rewards when you manage the territory with care. Miss Swan seems to be very experienced. Can you evaluate how Flower Town compares to small towns in other countries? It is far from prosperous, but it has great potential. The territory is rich in products. I heard that you also have an elf that produces potions. The development of Flower Town will come soon. Not soon, but it's happening, List said proudly. At the time of the enfeoffment, Flower Town was poor, with a population of less than 2,000. They were hungry, especially in winter. Now Flower Town has a population of more than 3,500, and everyone is full. It is unique on Coral Island. Swan said, but half of the population are serfs you sold. If you don't buy them, they may still live a stable life in their hometown. If I don't buy them, someone else will buy them. It's not me who destroys their stable life, but the incompetent lords who can't protect their people. The knight has a gun and a sword, enjoys the support of the people, and naturally has to protect the safety of the people. When they come to Flower Town, their safety will be handed over to me. No sale, no killing. List directly stole the concept and changed it to no killing, no sale. But are you sure you can protect these people and not one day they will be sold as serfs again? Swan looked at List with burning eyes. Was he going to test him? List's thoughts flashed across his mind. It seemed to be the same routine he had used before he joined the faction. Chuckling softly, I cannot guarantee that I'm strong enough to be fearless, but in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, it is not difficult for me to shelter the Flower Town. My father is the Earl of Coral Island, and my grandfather is the Marquis of Red Crab Island. My mount is an intermediate world of Warcraft, my longsword is a gem weapon, and I have a fairy that produces potions. He looked into the distance. His handsome face shone brightly under the sunlight. No one can give them peace and tranquility more than me. It was very infectious. However, the mercenary was not easy to fool. Maybe one day on the battlefield, you will suddenly die and lose your lord. The Flower Town's fate is not necessarily better than that of the captured serfs. List continued to smile. That's why I have to accumulate strength and practice hard every day. My talent may not be outstanding, and I only broke through to become an Earth Knight after adulthood. But after 6 months, I can already defeat an elite Earth Knight. I will continue to recruit Knight from a Knight squad and guard Flower Town. Really, I hate the hypocrisy and belligerence of the aristocracy. Swan said calmly with a little sigh. Although you are also a hypocritical aristocrat, at least you do not have the misdeeds of the aristocracy. Flower Town, a small town on an overseas island, may really be able to enjoy peace. Not waiting for List to speak, she regained her calm tone and said directly, Baron, I hope to take my sister away or buy her for 20 silver coins. You are wrong on 2 points. List has seen the other party's psychological retreat. At this moment, it is necessary for the enemy to retreat. He said sternly, First, I will not buy or sell any civilians in Flower Town. Second, I have asked Irene, she has no sister, and I have sent someone to Coral City to ask her parents. I am more willing to believe in her parents. I'm not talking about Irene. List stared. What? She was a little unconfident. I'm talking about a slave girl you bought. She is my sister, so I chased her all the way to Coral Island. The time for a showdown has arrived. Chapter 222. The strategy of the enemy retreating is that when you are righteous and others are wronged, you can make a loud noise. Of course, moderation is necessary. Otherwise, if the other party is irritated, they may directly attack. If I offended you, Baron, I apologize. Swan's expression was covered by a veil and could not be seen clearly, but her eyes were a little evasive, unable to look directly at List's eyes. But I have to take my sister away. If I heard correctly, you're not opposed to family reunion. Do you really have a sister who was trafficked to Flower Town, rather than coming to Flower Town with bad intentions? List saw that the time was almost right and gave the other party a way out. Swan really followed the steps down. Do you think I would come to such a remote town on a remote island in a remote island country with bad intentions? List pointed to several lounges on the training ground. Let's go to the lounge and talk. The manservant Thomas added firewood to the stove in the lounge, got up and retreated, and stood outside the door with Dosen. In the room, only List and Swan were sitting by the fire. Flower Town is my territory, and you are the first uninvited guest of the castle. I believe that you are looking for your sister, so why did you sneak into my study and spy on me? As I said before, I was going to kill the lord who sold serfs and take my sister away. Swan said calmly, and when she saw the disapproval on List's face, she added, Don't show that expression. Once my strength breaks out, your father, the wave sword sage Lee William, can't keep me. List was really surprised. Are you a Sky Knight? Or a great magician? If she was really so powerful, then his so-called strategy was simply walking a tightrope. He also took a look at Dosen outside the door and barely calmed down. Neither. Swan suddenly smiled lightly, with a sense of playfulness. Have you heard of servant? Servant. List had never heard of it. Swan smiled again. It was a teasing smile, but it felt like a self-deprecating one. Putting away her smile, she continued, I saw my sister in the kitchen. She was very happy here and even praised you in private. So I went upstairs to see what kind of lord could receive the sincere praise of his subjects. I was going to take a look and leave, but I didn't expect you to see through my invisibility spell. The other party had indeed wanted to kill him, but he had given up on it. Liz still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. He didn't know if the other party was lying or not. Fortunately, the adult soul was able to control its emotions and replied generously. So, it was just a misunderstanding, and now the misunderstanding has been resolved? So, which maid of the castle is your sister? Maggie. She's training outside. Oh, it's Maggie. List breathed a sigh of relief. At least the other party seemed to have reached an agreement. He shouted towards the door. Thomas, tell Rome to bring a little girl named Maggie over. Yes, master. After a short while, Rome came in with Maggie. Maggie looked at Swan curiously and then greeted List. Master, what can I do for you? List waved his hand and let Rome leave. He looked at Swan again, indicating with his eyes that she should speak, or he should speak. Swan nodded, indicating that she should speak. She took a deep breath, stretched out her hand, and took off the veil on her face, revealing a beautiful face. According to List's aesthetic standards, out of 10, he could give her 8. 5 points. Whether it was the face shape or the facial features, they were very delicate. The main flaw was that there were a few freckles, which ruined the beauty. Such a face was not a surprise, but it was definitely not a disillusionment. As soon as she took off the veil, Maggie's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe it, until Swan spoke, in the wind language, Maggie, sister. Maggie also shouted in the wind language. Then the two of them hugged each other tightly. This picture was very touching, but List looked speechless. Who can translate it for me? Margie said sister, and I got that, but what did Swan say? Looking at the two sisters, it seemed that there was no end to what they had to say, and all that came out was the wind language. He regretted that he should have asked old Granddad to come over. Without an interpreter, he didn't know what they were talking about. But soon, not knowing what Swan said, Maggie suddenly hesitated and stammered. List quickly interjected, Maggie, what is your sister saying? Sister, I hope I will go home with her. Maggie explained in snake language, but, Master, Mrs. Harriet and I, she is my mother. Swan also turned to snake language. But I am your sister, the closest sister. Mrs. Harriet is just your contract mother. Maggie stammered again. List immediately shouted out the door. Thomas, go and ask Mrs. Harriet and Mr. Harriet to come over. Then he said to Swan, you are Maggie's sister. No one can change that. But I think maybe we should inform Mrs. Harriet. She really treats Maggie as her own daughter. Swan took a deep look at Maggie and nodded slowly. The atmosphere became silent. Neither Swan nor Maggie spoke, and List just kept smiling. When Maggie peeked at him, his smile was even brighter. It could be seen that the little maid liked Flower Town and didn't want to leave with her sister. It didn't take long for Harriet's family to arrive, including her son and daughter-in-law. Mrs. Harriet, who had been hinted at by old Granddad, burst into tears as soon as she appeared. Maggie, my daughter, my God, are you leaving me? Maggie bowed her head in shame and moved. I'm not, Mom. Mrs. Harriet put her arms around Maggie. Really, you won't leave, Mom? That's great. By the way, this is your sister, the magician sister you mentioned? Well, she's my sister, Paris. Hello, magician. Mrs. Harriet quickly saluted. Swan didn't know what to say. She was only 19 years old this year, the same age as Olvera. She could only nod at once. Yes, I'm Maggie's sister, Paris, but I'm not a magician. Ah, Lady Paris, I don't object to you taking Maggie away, but I really don't want to part with Maggie. I've always wanted to have a daughter. I heard that Maggie's biological parents have died. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned this, but I hope to do my duty as a mother and take care of Maggie. Mrs. Harriet, who ran the grocery store, was very talkative and talked a lot. It made Swan, or Paris, feel like she was committing a crime by taking Maggie away. List kept a smile on his face. In his heart, he thought, Paris, a good name. If there is no problem with her background and her strength is as strong as she said, it is not a bad idea to keep her. Then again, What is the profession of a servant? Why is it so mysterious? I'll have to ask carefully later. Chapter 223. On the same day, Maggie did not follow Paris and stayed at Mrs. Harriet's house. Paris also had her lunch at Mrs. Harriet's house. Liz did not immediately get to the bottom of it and interrogate Paris about her background. Just like putting a long line to catch a big fish, the fishing line could not be in a tight state all the time, so the big fish would break it. What needed to be done was to relax and tighten the line, constantly trembling, and consume the strength of the big fish and finally catch the big fish. The life of a lord was quite boring. Therefore, Liszt had plenty of time to enjoy this means of manipulating people's minds. A lord who could not manipulate people's minds was not a qualified lord. Whether it was tempting with benefits, bewitching with honor, or even threatening to bind, they were all means of manipulation. After lunch, he met with old Granddad again and told the other party, "Go and remind Mrs. Harriet that the way for Maggie not to leave is actually very simple. Just let her sister Paris stay in Flower Town." Old Granddad, now a town official, was full of energy. "Sir, perhaps it would be more appropriate for me to talk to Dennis and let him remind Harriet." Dennis was Mrs. Harriet's husband. Yes. Old Granddad took the order and left. In the afternoon, Liz thought that Maggie would ask for a leave to accompany her sister. However, unexpectedly, Maggie followed the other little maids and little servants to the castle to start her internship. Mr. Carter called Maggie. "Yes, master." When Maggie arrived, Liszt asked directly, "Maggie, why don't you go and accompany your sister? You can ask for a leave." "Master, I want to work, stay in Flower Town. I don't want to leave." Maggie was now both happy and troubled. Her sister, whom she thought about day and night, appeared as promised, but she did not want to leave Harriet's family, this beautiful town, and the benevolent lord. She may be very young, but she had seen the lord of her hometown riding on a tall horse, whipping the serfs at every turn. Once, her father was severely whipped by Sir Lord 10 times. But in Flower Town, she had never seen Liszt whip anyone. Even if he did whip someone, it was an official punishing a commoner who had made a mistake. In her simple view, a benevolent lord was worth following. "It's all right, Maggie. If you don't want to leave, either Mrs. Harriet or I will let you stay. Now go back and accompany your sister. I'll ask Mr. Carter to give you half a day off." "Master, can I really stay?" "Yes." And Maggie happily went back on vacation and found her sister. The two sisters strolled around Flower Town for an afternoon. Maggie shared the peanuts she fried in the castle kitchen, and then Paris gave her a pendant. The pendant wasn't very beautiful, because what hung from it weren't gems or crystals, but 2 wrinkled leaves, one big and one small. "Take her, Maggie, and don't lose her." "What leaves are they, sister?" "The large leaves with wavy edges are oak leaves, and the small oblong leaves are mistletoe leaves." Paris explained, "Mistletoe is a parasitic plant on the oak tree. It represents hope and fertility, and the oak tree represents strength and unyielding." Maggie understood and put the pendant into her clothes. "Sister, are you leaving?" "Maggie, leave with me. Let's go home." Maggie lowered her head. "But Mom and Dad were killed, and our village was destroyed. What can we do if we go back? This sister will protect you. We can find a place and start a new life." Paris flexed her biceps. "You have to believe in sister's strength. Although I haven't become a mage, I'm stronger than one. But I feel that Flower Town is quite good. Sir Lord will protect us. Besides, I have a new mother. Mrs. Harriet is my mother." Dinner was still at Mrs. Harriet's house. Once again, Paris proposed to take Maggie away. At this time, Mrs. Harriet, who had already been informed, quietly asked, "Paris, why do you insist on letting Maggie leave with you? She's just a 9-year-old girl. How can she adapt to a wandering life?" "I will take care of her, Mrs. Harriet." "Of course I know. You are her sister. But have you ever thought about it?" "Thought about what?" "Staying in Flower Town." Mrs. Harriet laughed. "If you are not in a hurry to leave, you can stay in Flower Town, can't you? I have lived in Flower Town for 20 years. It is quiet and undisturbed here. My son grew up and got married here. He is about to have a child. Maggie can also grow up here. Paris had never thought about that. But after a moment, she felt that it was indeed an interesting proposal. She came all the way to Coral Island in order to rescue her sister, who was sold. However, her sister was living a good life, so what was the point of this rescue? Why was she so obsessed with taking her sister away? I will think about it, Mrs. Harriet. Thank you for your hospitality. That night, Paris did not mention taking Maggie away again. She still lived in the aristocratic residential area. Of course, Liszt generously waived her accommodation costs. He had learned about the progress of Paris and Maggie through old Grandette and others. He knew that things were settled. Probably tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, Paris will ask to stay. If she is outside, there's no reason to go back. But beyond Liszt's plan, Paris visited the castle that night. This time she did not rely on invisibility to sneak in, but showed up to visit and was left in the hall by Carter. When Carter knocked on the door and entered the study to ask for instructions, Liszt, who was reading, nodded calmly. Invite her into the study and make 2 cups of milk tea. A moment later, Paris was brought in by Carter. After sitting down, she did not talk nonsense and said directly, Baron, I used to be a thief mercenary in the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. Although I have left, I still retain the identity of a registered mercenary. I don't know if you need to hire a mercenary to work for you. The Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf, like the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, was one of the vassal states of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. Listening to you, are you going to stay in Flower Town and take care of Maggie? Liszt nodded. So, first of all, make a perfect self-introduction. You said that you have killed aristocrats. I am also an aristocrat, so I want to make sure that you stay in Flower Town and will not bring trouble to Flower Town. You can rest assured that I've killed a lot of aristocrats and am still wanted in the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf, but no one will chase me to such a remote island state. Chapter 224. The 15-year-old girl wanted to learn magic, but it was not easy to find a magician. When she asked around, she finally found the address of a magician who lived in seclusion. The magician asked her if she had money. Of course, she had no money, so the magician refused. Why do you want to learn magic if you have no money? Paris was not discouraged. She continued to look for a magician. After being rejected by 3 magicians, she finally succeeded in becoming an apprentice of a female magician. However, this female magician used her as an experimental subject. After the painful pain deprivation magic experiment, she escaped. In addition to her injuries, she did not learn any magic. She was hungry, cold, sick, and almost died. Then she was rescued by a group of thieves living in the sewers and became a thief herself. She thought that in this life, she could only be one of the rats who survived in filth, stealing for a living. As a result, she was accidentally involved in a mighty event. Paris calmly narrated, in the Maple Mountain of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf, there is a dragon, the Light Dragon. It makes the whole Maple Mountain a mirage, and no one can find where it is. Because of this dragon, all the people in the cities near Maple Mountain moved away. At this time, the great court magician of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf came up with the idea of stealing the mysterious power of the Light Dragon. I don't know which magic book he read, but under certain conditions, a human killed by a dragon will become a ghost-like ghost, called a white dragon. So he used dragon blood as a gimmick. With the support of the nobles, he bewitched a large number of rats to cooperate with him to create white dragons. Her beautiful face showed a trace of hatred. And I'm also one of the rats who was blinded by dragon blood. If there is no accident, I am probably dead. So you did not die, but became a white dragon. Liszt was surprised. For the first time, he heard that a person killed by a dragon would become a white dragon. Isn't this the same nature as the ancient legend of helping a tiger? Paris shook her head. The real white dragon is a ghost-like existence. Do you think I'm like a ghost? The great magician did not know that a thief stole his research notes, so he woke up. But it was too late. The light dragon appeared in front of us. The medium-sized light dragon was faintly discernible. The rats were engraved with a mark of the light dragon's interest by the great magician. This was a kind of passive magic that could not be erased. It extracted the resentment of humans after death and combined it with the mysterious power of the light dragon. Tried to condense the white dragon he wanted. The mice were killed one by one, but the white dragon never condensed. While we're on the run, we're trying to prevent the light dragon and the great sorcerer from catching us, and at the same time, we're thinking of a countermeasure. The thief who stole the notes came up with a way to reverse the magic mark, that is, to volunteer and become a living white dragon. In the end, we did it. We became a living white dragon. A living white dragon. List's eyes looked back and forth at Paris. He couldn't figure out what kind of state this was. Paris seemed to understand List's thoughts. She stretched out her left hand and rolled up her sleeves, revealing a white arm, which was very dazzling. However, in the next moment, the veins on this white arm suddenly bulged, and then scales grew from the flesh, and the palm at the front gradually twisted from a human hand into a beast's claw. There has never been a dragon among humans, because the power of dragons corrodes everything about humans. This kind of corrosive power is called white dragon by mages, and the white dragon is the ultimate result of a human being corroded. Magic eye was cast. List could see that the magic in Paris's left hand was abundant and active. She even pulled the free magic from the air and condensed it on her arm, forming a faint black mist. The real white dragon is a white ghost-like thing. We are willing to sacrifice ourselves and be corroded by the power of the dragon in order to survive. As the corrosive power continues to strengthen, sooner or later we will be swallowed up and become a real white dragon. It may be just a simple death. Paris took back this change, and her arm returned to its previous white appearance. List could not forget the hideous monster arm just now, which had left a shadow in his heart. He could not help but exclaim and regret. This kind of corrosion is irreversible. Yes, as long as the power of the dragon is used, the corrosion will deepen. Therefore, if I don't easily use the power that can compete with the Sky Knight and the Great Magician, I can probably live for another 10 years. Paris sighed. There was no regret or regret. We call ourselves the Black Dragon. She paused and suddenly added, I think if I burst out with all my power, I can kill the Sky Knight. The meaning of this superfluous sentence is very clear. She hopes that List will carefully consider how to treat her and not do whatever he wants just because he has a Sky Knight as his father. Probably listening to the story too seriously. Or maybe he didn't want to do whatever he wanted at all. List just exclaimed, Are you sure you can really kill the Sky Knight if you burst out with the power of the White Dragon? Of course, otherwise how could we kill the Great Magician? You killed the Great Magician. There were a total of 4 of us who survived successfully. Each of us tore the Great Magician apart with one claw. Paris laughed out loud. Later, we killed a bunch of nobles who tricked the rats to die, and even formed a mercenary group until the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf dispatched the Dragon Knight. We took our revenge, left the mercenary group, and took refuge separately. Paris and others were wanted by the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. After hiding for a while, a new round of war broke out between the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom, and she quietly returned to her hometown. Then, there was the story of Flower Town. After listening to the story, List thought for a full quarter of an hour before he said, Paris, so you didn't kill nobles? Then you can live for about 10 years without using the power of the White Dragon. If you use it, can you burst out the power to kill the Sky Knight? In the end, you were only wanted by the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf and did not kill anyone in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire? Paris nodded. List asked again, So what's the matter with your invisibility? It's part of the ability inherited from the Light Dragon. I can adjust the light around my body to achieve the effect of invisibility. It's just a small skill. She finished and took a sip of milk tea. My identity has been revealed, so what other doubts do you have? Trust takes time to build. List did not intend to continue to ask questions and immediately said, In view of your strength and special ability, I hope to hire you as my guard to protect my personal safety. If you can accept, I am willing to hire you at the price of 1 gold coin per month. I can accept the task of guarding, but 1 gold coin is not enough. I also need a big house, preferably with a garden. I want to restore Maggie's status as a free citizen and ask an Earth Knight to teach her how to cultivate chi. I also want a horse, preferably 2 servants. Stop. Chapter 225. On the castle lawn, Paris swung her sword and Londo was sent flying. Russell, who was waiting for the battle, felt his scalp tingle. Lord Baron, where did this mercenary come from? She's too violent. What do you think of her strength? List, who was watching the battle, was very proud. Londo can't last 5 rounds. My strength and Londo's are about the same. Her strength is at least at the elite Earth Knight level. Russell told the truth, but felt that it sounded timid. So he added, if it's on the battlefield, it's hard to say. Her fighting style is not suitable for charging. List agreed with this statement. Paris's fighting style belongs to the close combat nature. The effect of sword fighting is very strong, and the charge is difficult to judge. However, he was only recruiting a guard who was good at sword fighting. He said to Russell, Londo lost. It's your turn. Russell took a deep breath, pulled out his steel sword, put on a death-defying expression, and rushed up. After 5 rounds, he, like Londo, flew out. After defeating 2 Earth Knights in a row, Paris did not pant much. Her strength made her physical fitness far superior to that of the Earth Knight with combat energy. The Earth Knight could use combat energy. Paris had magic in her body, but she could not use combat energy, which was a special magic belonging to the Light Dragon. What was given to her was the ability to change the light around her and hide her body behind the light. During the battle, she mobilized her magic, twisted the light, and could always cause confusion to her opponent. She could only use 70% to 80% of her abilities. Clap, clap, clap. List clapped his hands, satisfied with Paris's strength. He believed that she was indeed worth a high salary of 1 gold coin a month. Wonderful battle. Londo, Russell, it's hard for you to fight in a way that you're not good at. Take a break and have a cup of milk tea. Paris, it's hard to imagine you wielding such a 2-handed sword. He hired Paris as his bodyguard. It was not an impulsive move, nor was it List's inexplicable greed for beauty. In fact, the hideous monster arm had left a deep shadow on him, destroying many of his beautiful imaginations, and he could no longer treat Paris as a beauty. He had hired Paris for the job. Firstly, this is the form of reward for the smoke task, which makes him reluctant to give up. Secondly, as a black dragon, she has secrets about dragons, which List is very interested in and hopes to keep by his side to study. Thirdly, she killed the aristocrats for a reason, and the stain is clean. Fourthly, Maggie is in Flower Town, so Paris is unlikely to pose a threat. It would be a pity not to keep such combat power. Finally, there was his senses. He sensed that Paris was not a very shrewd woman. Her style of doing things was rather flamboyant. She relied on the fact that she had some ability. Even though she was clearly trying to save her younger sister, she still had to rush into the study room to look at the handsome man. Thinking back to her past, she failed to learn magic, was used as an experiment subject, and became a thief. In the end, she was even tricked into going her death. Furthermore, after being fooled by him for a while, she had delivered herself to his doorstep to lower her value. No matter how one looked at him, he didn't look like a smart person. It wasn't good for a woman to be too smart, and it was even worse for a powerful woman to be too smart. A woman like Paris, who was powerful but had average IQ and wasn't very shrewd, was actually more reassuring. Baron, don't you want to test my strength in person? Over there, Paris, who didn't know that she had been labeled as big breasts and no brains, waved his sword as tall as a person and said provocatively. In the face of this level of provocation, List's heart did not waver, but he still smiled and said, "You can rest first." He had no opponents in Flower Town, and it was a good idea to practice with Paris. The magic I could see through the invisibility spell, which just hit her arrogance. 2 Earth Knight, who are not even elite, did not consume my physical strength at all. Paris said disdainfully. Russell and Randy had gone to the apple table to rest and did not hear such humiliation. List was not pretentious. He patted Dosun's head and let it stay where it was, and slowly walked towards Paris, while slowly pulling out the red blood sword. The other party was a black dragon servant with a dragon blessing. He used the red blood sword and also had a dragon blessing. By the way, Paris, let me ask you a question. Will a fight like this consume your life? As long as I don't transform, it is a normal consumption. Otherwise, I will become a waste, and I will have to live a few years less. Paris held the sword in both hands, and her previous relaxed expression has been replaced by seriousness. She felt the surging fighting spirit of List. Compared to Russell and Randy, he is much stronger. In the face of this handsome, noble, and powerful noble lord, she still has some inferiority complex. The overall atmosphere of society is like this. Mercenaries and thieves are the middle and lower classes of society, and the nobles are the real upper class. You can hate the hypocrisy of the nobles, and you can kill the nobles for revenge, but if there is a chance, everyone wants to be a noble. No matter what identity, in the face of the nobles, they are inferior. There was no snow, the sun was hanging in the sky, and the warm sunshine melted the snow on the meadow. The alfalfa under his feet was good at isolating the soil. The leather boots stepped on it, and the texture was soft. List did not use the magic eye. He planned to first feel Paris's fighting style involving light and shadow, and also to show weakness to the enemy. Great Fire Wave. The moves of the Fire Dragon Drill secret book gushed out, and the red blood sword was like a flame, and the amplification effect doubled the power of List's secret book. Paris had no choice but to use the light and shadow entanglement to block the flaming sword with just this one move. At that moment, List only felt that his eyes were blurred, and Paris's figure seemed to move in an instant, and he took a step back. He instinctively wanted to adjust the trajectory of the red blood sword. However, he forcibly restrained himself. He still attacked the same place. Clang! The red blood sword was blocked by the big sword, and Paris's figure appeared again in the same place. But she had moved a step to the right, so List's attack was still off. In the next few rounds, no matter how hard List tried to restrain his naked eyes, he still couldn't capture Paris's real figure. This kind of unexpected light and shadow entanglement was very troublesome. If it weren't for his powerful attack power, wide attack range, and the explosive nature of his fire attribute Qi, forcing Paris to be careful in defense, he might have been quickly defeated by the opponent. But it was this strange fighting style that allowed List's combat experience to rise, and he slowly learned to attack Paris's position in advance through his body's prediction. Gradually, he reversed the situation and began to force Paris to stabilize her defense, unable to fight back. Her physical fitness is at the same level as Marcus. Without the light and shadow pull, I can defeat her at any time. List's heart was clear. He had judged Paris's true level, so he no longer reserved his strength and quickly released the magic eye. The next moment, the human figure formed by magic had completely exposed Paris's position through the light and shadow pull. The red blood sword erupted with Qi, and he slashed at the position where Paris retreated, displaying the ultimate meaning, Heart of Fire Dragon Drill. Under the astonished gaze of the other party, the red blood sword, wrapped in explosive Qi, struck her through the thick, heavy sword and sent her flying. List drew a flower with the sword. The red blood sword was sheathed. Chapter 2:26. After the battle on the horse field, Paris's arrogance was restrained a lot, and she began to take her guard identity seriously. Of course, it was not a 24-hour personal guard. Most of the time, List did not need her to follow him at all times, and he would not let her follow him at all times. There were too many secrets that were not suitable for Paris to know. Trust was not built in a day or two. It took time to observe and run in to determine whether a person was trustworthy or not. In Flower Town, you can move freely and occasionally act as my actual combat opponent. When I go out, you follow me to protect my safety. There is basically no danger on Coral Island. There is no opportunity for you to use the power of the Black Dragon Gang. This is an easy job. Then what if I want to go to Coral City? You can go if you get permission. No one will restrict your life. Liz said, but one thing is, on Coral Island, you must not violate the rules of the territory and do not expose the information that you are wanted by the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. After all, we are all vassals of the Steel Ridge Kingdom. Although it was an independent country, the Sapphire Grand Duke and the Grand Duke of Maple Leaf, in a strict sense, were only dukes of the Steel Ridge Kingdom and belonged to the same camp. You are too cautious, Baron. You should call me Lord Baron. This is the basic etiquette in the face of the aristocracy, Ms. Paris. Liz showed the elegance of the aristocracy. This kind of bearing was indeed very convincing. At least, Paris still called out reluctantly, Lord Baron. The magic of the dragon can corrode people and turn them into White Dragon or Black Dragon gang. This was a major discovery for Liszt. This made him more careful when studying the magic of the fire dragon. He didn't want to become a monster that could transform. Moreover, he only had a lifespan of more than 10 years, which was obviously not in line with his ideal of a long life. His ideal was to ride a dragon, not to be ridden by a dragon. Speaking of which, I really have a fate with dragons. The invisible dragon's gem gift, the smoke dragon's fate infection, the fire dragon's residual magic, and now the light dragon's black dragon gang. Unfortunately, it was still far from being able to ride a dragon. Marcus is mining on Black Horse Island, and volcanic glass will continue to be shipped to the castle. Liz took the time to design the bathhouse, ready to use the heat of the magic fire dragon to complete the next smoke quest and obtain a new type of flame mushroom. The bathtub hot spring had already been designed, with a separate structure of a bathtub and a heated water tank. To put it bluntly, it was using the small fire dragon to heat the stove and provide hot water. It was not difficult and creative. The only trouble was how to put the magical fire dragon into the heating tank accurately and calculate how much magic was enough to heat it. If there was too little magic power, the hot spring would not be as effective. If there was too much magic power, the eggs might even be cooked. So, whether it's a bathtub, a hot spring, or a bathhouse, if you want to use the magic fire dragon, you have to first light up the prerequisite skill, release and release magic. There is a perfect example of how to release and withdraw magic power. Paris. However, after asking Paris indirectly, Liszt expressed his regret. The power of Paris Black Dragon Gang is the same as the Knight's Do Chi. It can be mobilized with a single thought, but how to mobilize it is mysterious. Then he asked about the White Dragon research notes of the great court magician. The notes are with the thief who stole the book. He left after his revenge, and I don't know where he went. As for why I can become a white dragon, it is because we were marked by the great magician. I don't understand the principle. I haven't become a magician, and I can't read the notes. Paris has a bad feeling about magicians. In fact, although she knows snake and wind language, she is semi-illiterate and doesn't know many words. Before the age of 15, she was a civilian and illiterate. After the age of 15, she was either a vagrant or a thief, and she never had a chance to learn knowledge. She didn't know much about words, which was taught to her by the magician when she was used as a magic experimental material. Paris will not work, and Liszt can only study the magic of the fire dragon and the volcanic glass independently. Unfortunately, I am not a scientist. Paris's special identity as a black dragon is very suitable for research as a lab rat. He drew up a few clumsy experimental plans. Just wait for the volcanic glass mine to come back and start the experiment. By the way, I also have a 36D ghost in my floating bottle. I don't know if I can infect it with the magic of the fire dragon and make it a white dragon. He thought curiously. A long time ago, even a specter made him startled, feeling that it was inconceivable. The more he experienced, the more inconceivable things he encountered, the more astonishment he felt gradually disappeared. Dragons and elves can exist, and other ghosts, servants, werewolves, vampires, and even orcs, dwarves, and trolls can come out. Winter has officially arrived, and the river has begun to freeze. Just yesterday, the architect Mbappe Gravel left with his apprentices, and the completed ice house was officially handed over to Flower Town. However, The ice in the river is not thick enough to be stored in the ice house. The ice house project is over. Other projects are being opened one after another. The officials headed by Gort were destined to not be idle this winter. The reclamation of the Thorns Ridge, the quarrying of the dock area, the construction of the carpentry workshop, the construction of the Knight Square, as well as the surf serpentine teaching, craftsman's apprentice training, children's chi training, and a lot of other matters were waiting to be arranged. In order to prevent the new serfs from forming groups, these days officials are mainly allocating accommodation and work arrangements for the serfs, making sure that the local residents and the new serfs are mixed and matched. With the advent of winter and the private fishing in the seaside town, the seafood business is getting more and more depressed. Fortunately, the market for flour soap has been opened up. After assigning their deputies, Sherlock and Harpagon became more honest and immersed themselves in business. Now no one among the nobles is using soap, and they're all scrambling to buy flour soap. Because of this, the flour soap was sold at a low price for less than a week, and it rose back to the original price of soap. Even so, Baron Henderson of Snakespeare City, his caravan, and the soap business is about to fail. The reason why it has not completely failed is that the production of the soap workshop in Flower Town cannot go up. Even if Burnell has brought 20 apprentices to work frantically, it still can't meet the market demand. On one hand, the soap is not selling. On the other hand, the flour soap is in short supply. According to the information sent back by the flour caravan, Baron Henderson has been furious these days. He even drank a few glasses of wine at the banquet and threatened to duel with List. After sobering up, he never mentioned it again. If List were to ride Dosen in the duel, the result would be self-evident. But more than once, he scolded List for being greedy and robbing him of the benefits he deserves. Don't pay attention to Henderson's clamor. When the soap business is completely depressed, I'm afraid he won't have the strength to shout again. Let him concentrate on providing soap powder. If he doesn't know what's good for him, let him go bankrupt. Don't think that just because you're a baron, you can say whatever you want. Can't my red blood sword drink blood? Chapter 227. Even though the snow and ice had arrived, the Sea of Flower Town was not frozen, and the flowers returned to the dock unimpeded. This time, they brought back a ship full of volcanic glass, ore, and some fire dragon bone fragments. The architectural plan of the port town has been roughly planned according to the design drawings of the Lord. Marcus reported to List in the castle study. The bone fragments in the burial ground have been cleaned up, and most of the volcanic glass, or between the rock pillars, has been mined. If we continue to mine now, we will destroy the grassland. The grassland cannot be destroyed for the time being. It is important to raise black blood horses, and there is enough volcanic glass. This is a strategic resource. We have to think about the future of Black Horse Island. So how will the next plan for Black Horse Island be carried out? Let's thought for a moment. Build a residential area in the port town. I will increase the number of immigrants and strive to form the port town as soon as possible to facilitate the development of Black Horse Island. Black Horse Island was his future foundation, and Flower Town was a temporary shelter. His first plan was to build a small town on Black Horse Island, the port town, as a frontier for the development of Black Horse Island. The Count developed Coral Island and accumulated resources for several generations, but he started from scratch and could only do it step by step. Black Horse Island needed to be kept secret, so for the time being, Thomas could only be entrusted to develop it. After talking about the port town, Marcus expressed his doubts. "My lord, have you studied the role of magic in volcanic glass?" He had been in charge of mining and did not know the progress in this area. List had no intention of hiding it. "Teacher Marcus, I have discovered the role of magic. It can be used as a continuous source of heat." He pulled out the design drawings he had drawn and handed them to Marcus. "This is the bathhouse plan I designed. There are a lot of projects in winter in Flower Town. Civilians work and sweat every day and need a bathhouse to drive away the cold and reduce the danger of cold. Children who train in Chi also need the help of a bathhouse. The magic of the fire dragon is very suitable for the bathhouse. Marcus looked at the design drawings and handed back the thick bast paper. My lord's design is exquisite. In fact, he did not understand List's abstract architectural proportions. Putting away the blueprint, List asked Thomas to call Gord over for a small meeting. The content of the meeting was to select a new group of strong serfs and assign them to work on Black Horse Island. In this way, the number of serfs in Flower Town is not enough. Gord complained, "If it's not enough, I'll buy more. Now is a good time to buy serfs." List had already treated the slave trade as a daily routine. As for the gold coins stored in the castle, I'll think of a way. He planned to sell a batch of mithril ore. This was a precious strategic resource, and he was reluctant to sell it. However, it was still a long time before the Flower Town could cast armor. Even if he formed a knight squad, they could only be equipped with standard armor produced in Tulip Castle, not mithril armor. With the existence of smoke tasks, there is still a lot of wealth to be harvested in the future, and immediate development is more important. Gord had no problem with the sale of serfs. He said easily, "Yes, the price of serfs will be very cheap now, and maybe it will attract a few more Paris." Paris? Marcus wondered. A female mercenary. Her sister is a sold serf. She followed and is now a guard of my lord. She is very powerful, an elite Earth Knight. Marcus asked cautiously, "Can she be trusted?" List knocked on the table and replied, "Her basic situation should not be false, but trust is not yet reached. You have to guard against her for many secret things." Understood. Marcus nodded and said, "But my lord, I suggest that my lord recruit followers from Coral Island as much as possible. The Tulip family has been working on Coral Island for 20 years. They are all trustworthy forces." Of course, List understood. But Paris was a reward from the smoke task, and it was related to dragons. List could not say it clearly, so he changed the subject. "Speaking of recruiting followers, Advisor Gort, are there many people who went to Flower Town recently?" As the Lord Advisor, he was List's representative. Gort replied, "There are many aristocrats and quasi-aristocrats who have written to me, but not many have made up their minds. You know, the aggressive knight has followed the count to the battlefield, and the rest have either lost their initiative or are not strong enough. Try to choose, especially young Earth Knight and quasi-aristocrats who are familiar with official business. Young Earth Knight can be cultivated to prepare for the upcoming Knight Squad. Quasi-aristocrats who are familiar with the business can first be inspected in Flower Town and later sent to Black Horse Island. As you wish. By the way, my lord, do you remember Zambrata? Litton's tutor who was stripped of his title. What's wrong? He wrote to me, hoping to come to Flower Town in the next few days. He can't stand it anymore and hopes to find a job in Flower Town. You receive him first, and I will consider his knowledge later. If I am satisfied, I will not be stingy with a job. If he is not, I will not disregard my father's dignity for him." Marcus met Paris at the dinner party held in the restaurant on the first floor. There was no friction, and the two just nodded to each other. After that, Paris concentrated on food. She had been completely attracted by the castle's scrambled eggs, egg soup, bread with varied flavors, and fragrant milk. She wanted to eat and drink 3 meals a day in the castle. Her sister lived in Mrs. Harriet's house. She lived alone and was too lazy to cook. Of course, eating in the castle, she was not qualified to enter the restaurant on the second floor. She was eating at a table with Randy, Russell, and List Knights on the first floor. Only nobles and tutors could sit on the second floor. In order to win over his subordinates, List often held banquets in the restaurant on the first floor to facilitate all his subordinates to gather at one table to eat. Of course, he had actually entertained Carl, Rome, and others on the second floor. At that time, his understanding of the nobility was not very deep. Now he would not do that. Most of the time, the strict hierarchical system reflected the authority of the lord and the noble nature of the nobility. This was often a move to bow down and win people's hearts. After eating in the same pot for a long time, some people might not be able to see clearly and really think that being close to the people was a good thing, overstepping the status of each other. Butthead, List was a nobleman. Of course, he sat on the chair on the second floor. Coming downstairs to eat was just to win people's hearts. The security of the territory must be strictly managed. Carl, the patrol team needs to be expanded. The current quota of 30 people is too small. On average, there is only one patrol member for more than 100 people. Try to expand the recruitment to 90 people and assign one patrol member for 40 people. The ratio is barely up to standard. Chapter 228. Although the productivity of the other world is very weak and scientific literacy is terrible, this system of absolute authority of the Lord over the territory makes List efficient. After Marcus brought back the volcanic glass, he quickly asked the flower caravan to invite the crystal craftsman Brad to start polishing the volcanic glass, and began his own experiments. The first was the release and collection of the fire dragon magic. How to release the magic in the volcanic glass or bubble, after discussion with Gord and Marcus, decided to take the form of drilling. It is to drill the volcanic glass bubble, so that the volcanic glass does not need to be broken to release the internal fire dragon magic. The drilling task was given to the unknown Brad. After the release of the fire dragon magic, it gathered together to form a small magic fire dragon invisible to the naked eye. The next step is to collect the magic fire dragon and inject it into the volcanic glass carved utensils. How to carve the utensils? List instructed Brad to do it. Because there is no need for exquisite carving, the work progressed quickly. Brad has a pair of skillful hands. The irregular volcanic glass, under his carving, became parts of various shapes. Then, the parts were pieced together, the gaps were filled with volcanic glass powder, and the gaps were glued together, making watertight glassware. The arm-thick cylindrical jar, the fire dragon jar. In order to verify the sealing of this fire dragon jar, List deliberately released a little fire dragon magic in it. Seal the jar. There was no leakage of the fire dragon magic. The nature of volcanic glass has a restraining effect on the fire dragon magic, making it unable to condense, let alone escape. The next step is to fill it with magic for energy use. List followed the steps and handed a glassware blueprint to Brad. Brad looked at it for a long time and did not understand. Lord Baron, what is this? Can you explain it in detail? Can't you see it clearly? This is a large syringe. See the outer cylinder? This is the syringe jacket. This slender rod has a pot lid in front of it, which is the syringe push rod. The push rod and the jacket should be tightly sewn so that the push rod can be pushed and the contents of the syringe can be sprayed through the needle in front of it. There was no one there to give injections, so it took Brad a long time to figure out the structure of the bucket-sized syringe designed by List. The next step was carving and splicing to complete the large syringe. The largest piece of volcanic glass was only the size of a basketball, so the syringe required a lot of materials. Brad had carved crystals for many years, and his skills were extraordinary. The hardness of volcanic glass was far less than that of crystals, so he made it very fast. In 2 days, he made a large syringe through the splicing of the buckle. List took the large syringe and began the next step of the experiment. He aimed the jacket of the syringe at the small fire dragon that had condensed into half a man's height and directly buckled it. As the magic dragon was dispersed, some of the magic power also entered the syringe. Then he quickly covered the pot lid-like putter, and a needle filled with fire dragon magic was born. Insert the needle through the round hole into the fire dragon can. Then push the core rod, continuously compress the magic in the syringe, and inject it into the fire dragon can. A little fire dragon magic seeped out from the gap, but most of the magic was successfully poured into the fire dragon can. He kept repeating this operation, and soon all the released fire dragon magic was canned into the 3 fire dragon cans. In the vision of the magic eye, the fire dragon magic in the fire dragon can condense to the light red to gold, and it can no longer be canned and reach the limit. A rough estimate shows that a ton of volcanic glass can release about 2 fire dragon cans of fire dragon magic. Marcus brought about 6 tons of volcanic glass, so it could be canned into 12 fire dragon cans. Brad, you make 20 of these standard cans for me, and then make 5 larger cans and 20 smaller cans. 12 standard fire dragon cans were used to seal the fire dragon magic, and the remaining 8 were for backup. 5 large fire dragon cans and 20 small fire dragon cans were also for backup. He then gestured to the large syringe, which, like the fire dragon can, was the fire dragon needle. In addition, you make 2 more of this type of syringe, and then make 2 smaller syringe. Brad continued to make the glassware. List continued to study the fire dragon magic. With the fire dragon needle and the fire dragon can, he could move, divide, and recover the magic dragon at will. After his research, a small magic dragon the size of a palm was enough to boil a bathtub of cold water. A small magic dragon the size of half a palm could keep a bathtub of water at 40 degrees in a sub-zero environment, which was just right for bathing. However, the bathtub hot spring was a separate bathtub and heating water tank. So, in the heating water tank, a small magic dragon the size of half a palm was the best effect. It took 5 days for the castle to successfully have a bathtub hot spring. That night, List took a bath in the bathtub for more than an hour. Until he felt that he was about to be dehydrated, he reluctantly left the bathtub hot spring. Loosening the valve of the heating water tank, the hot water kept flowing out and was picked up by the servants with buckets. The servants could take the leftover bath water downstairs to continue bathing. Opening the bathroom window and the lid of the heating water tank, List did not take back the little fire dragon, but let it fly in the heating water tank. The magic dragon's ability to heat the air was not very strong, so even if it was left alone, it would not burn the bathroom. Not only that, but his bedroom was also covered with a box, and a small magic dragon was placed in it. Like a heater, it kept the room at a comfortable body temperature of 24-25 degrees and put a basin of water to prevent drying, and the whole bedroom was as warm as spring. Fire Dragon Thermostat Air Conditioner. Mr. Carter, these boxes have been set up with magic arrays. You tell the servants in the castle not to touch them indiscriminately, and when cleaning the dust, only wipe the outside of the box. Understood, Master. Admiring his masterpiece of the past few days, he could not help but feel emotional. The modernization of the castle has made initial progress. There are lights, air conditioners, bath tyrants. If I can get the magic of the ice dragon, I can make a refrigerator. If I can get the magic of the wind dragon, I can make an electric fan. Thinking of the wind dragon, he suddenly remembered that there was the magic of the wind dragon in the Wind Roar Valley of the Unsetting Radiance Empire. I wonder if volcanic glass can seal the magic of the wind dragon. Unfortunately, the Unsetting Radiance Empire was on the other side of the distant continent. Even if he set off on Black Dragon, it would probably take half a year. Apart from that, he did not know where else there was magic of the dragon. Only when a dragon died or bled would it leave behind residual magic power. The invisible dragon passed through the flower town and ate 2 cows. Apart from a space gem, it did not leave behind any magic power. So, Chapter 229. The bathhouse needed to boil hot water, a lot of hot water. Humans of this era used firewood to boil water. Commoners used firewood. Nobles used charcoal, and there was no record of coal being used. Coal should not be a product of dragons, because it was neither metal nor gem. Probably, no humans understood the mineral coal. At least, the Sapphire Grand Duchy had not heard of the combustible mineral coal. There were no records of other fossil fuels such as oil, natural gas, or anything similar. According to Liz's speculation, since there were saltpeter mines and volcanoes could spew basalt, there was no reason that coal, oil, and natural gas did not exist. But it was not certain. After all, metal mines all originated from dragons. There are no naturally formed metal mines, so it was not surprising that there were no naturally formed coal and oil. In short, firewood and charcoal were the main fuels. Firewood was dry branches, straw, and the like, while charcoal was the solid fuel left after wood was not sufficiently burned to remove water and impurities. When firewood burned, It would smoke and could not be fully burned. Charcoal had no smoke, burned fully, and was light. But firewood was cheap and charcoal was expensive. After cutting down the trees in the Thorns Ridge, Flower Town hoarded a lot of wood. In addition to the wood used for construction, many of the defective wood was used to make charcoal for the castle. Commoners picked up a lot of dry firewood and piled it home to cook. The bathhouse was for commoners and certainly could not afford to use charcoal. So before there was no other choice, only firewood was used. But to boil a large pool of hot water and maintain the water temperature, the amount of firewood consumed was definitely not small. It was labor-intensive and wasteful, and it also damaged the environment. After Liszt had the magic dragon, he decided to build a magic bathhouse in one go. Naturally pollution-free, did not consume energy, saved human resources, and had a 24-hour super endurance. The bathhouse he designed was mainly in the shape of a hot pot, separated by a fence in the middle, leaving the magic dragon to boil water, and surrounded by pools for people to take a bath. With Dosun's rock pillars, the construction of the bathhouse was not difficult. The bathhouse was soon dug, paved with stones, and waterproofed with wooden boards. The next step was to fill it with water. Liszt himself released the magic dragon and constantly adjusted the total amount of magic. Finally, it was determined that a bathhouse needed a bucket-sized magic dragon to heat the water to 40 degrees. At this point, wooden houses were built outside the bathtub, and the 2 bathhouses were completed. The whole process took no more than 5 days. On December 16th, they officially opened for business. It was free of charge from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. every day, and the bath time could not exceed 5 minutes. From 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, the restaurant was open for a fee. 1 copper coin per person, no time limit. Liszt had his own hot spring bathtub, so he naturally didn't need to visit the bathhouse. However, Gort and the others had been eyeing the bathhouse for a long time. This kind of bathhouse could only be found in big cities. Coral City could barely be regarded as a big city, but it was still a long way from the level of a metropolis. Therefore, there was no bathhouse. Ordinary bathhouses burned firewood, which was very expensive. Oh, comfortable to the bones. Gort sat in a hot pot bath and was soaked in warm water. He was so comfortable that he wanted to cry out. Taking a bath on a cold day was indeed a top-notch enjoyment. The men's bathhouse was located in the commercial district, with a conspicuous sign, Flower Town Public Men's Bathhouse. The women's bathhouse was located in the civilian residential area connecting the administrative office, with the same conspicuous sign, Flower Town Public Women's Bathhouse. Carl was specially asked to recruit several female patrols to be responsible for the security of the bathhouse, to prevent peeping maniacs and female civilians from peeping at bathing female civilians. At this time, Paris was lying in the bathhouse with her sister Maggie, enjoying the warm water soaking. "It's so comfortable, sister. It's really comfortable. I didn't expect to take such a comfortable hot bath in a small rural town." She rubbed the dirt on her body happily. During the long journey, she did not take a bath seriously. "Every day, I can eat delicious food, work is easy, and I can take a hot bath. The house I live in is also clean and tidy. Maggie, I have fallen in love with this place." Well, Maggie also likes Flower Town. Maggie learned to swim in the bathhouse and ran over to help her sister rub her back. She kept saying, "Praise the Lord, praise the noble Lord of Flower Town. Enjoy the pleasure of rubbing back." Paris narrowed her eyes, feeling so comfortable that she wanted to sleep and could not help but echo, "Baron, Sir Baron is really extraordinary." Under Liszt's deliberate concealment, no one asked how he heated the water in this large pool. On the first day of the trial operation, there were not many people who came to take a bath. Because civilians were used to not taking a bath, some people would not even take a bath all winter. What's more, taking a bath cost a copper coin. They were not stupid. With this money, it would be better to boil hot water at home and wipe their bodies, and then save it to buy 4 large pieces of black bread to eat for several days. However, after 6 o'clock in the evening, people came to take a bath in groups. Civilians who came back from construction sites and wastelands lined up, and no one wanted to let go of the free bath. Fortunately, the pool was big enough, and the prescribed time was only 5 minutes, barely enough to take a bath. The water in the pool, after only one round, turned black, and a thick layer of mud floated. The serfs did not mind, and enjoyed the hot water soak with laughter. The workers of the bathhouse shouted, "This is the great Lord's welfare for the civilians. You can enjoy such a happy moment. It is the Lord who brought it." As a result, the serfs responded one after another, "Praise Sir Lord." After the bath, there were workers shouting, "Great Lord, give you hot water. Praise the Lord. Sir Lord is so great. Great Lord, great Flower Town." All kinds of slogans were constantly uttered from the mouths of the serfs, including the new serfs, who also stammered, "Praise the Lord." This was an idea that Gort came up with, a very crude, brainwashing propaganda. Liszt did not object. He thought that the civilians should naturally thank him. In an entire Coral Island, only Flower Town had a bathhouse, which was open to free people and serfs. Although his original intention of building the bathhouse was to complete the smoke mission, he should be praised for doing good deeds. Isn't that right? At the banquet, after taking a bath, Paris, who was in a good mood, couldn't help but praise. Flower Town's public bathhouse is a great achievement, Sir Baron. Liszt cut the steak and responded flatly, "I give my subjects food, cotton-padded clothes, copper coins, and jobs. I also give them hot water to bathe. No one is more suitable to be a lord than me." Gort immediately stood up, raised his glass, and shouted, "For hot baths for Flower Town, a toast to the great Lord Baron Liszt." To the great Lord Baron Liszt. Seeing that everyone had raised their glasses, Paris could not eat and drink peacefully, and also raised her glass. To the great Lord Baron Liszt. Liszt raised his glass and smiled at his followers and subordinates. "I am with you." Every time this situation occurred at a banquet, it made him feel good. This was why he wanted Gort to be the town's consultant. At least in the bootlicking segment, Gort's performance was worth extra points. However, it was not good to be too arrogant. After all, he was a rational adult. He took a sip of red wine, but in his heart, he thought, "I need a loyal minister." Chapter 230. The establishment of the bathhouse has raised the prestige of the Lord to a higher level. Soaking in steaming hot water under the snowy weather would definitely leave a deep impression on anyone. 2 bathhouses, only half a can of fire dragon magic. Not much consumption. Liszt drilled all the volcanic glass bubbles, released and collected all the fire dragon magic, a total of 13 fire dragon cans. 2 bathhouses, the castle's bathtub hot spring, the bedroom and the study's fire dragon air conditioners, consumed half a can of magic. The remaining fire dragon cans are enough for him to build a brick factory, a ceramics factory, and even a steam turbine ship. Of course, the road has to be taken step by step. Every day seems boring, but in fact, he is very busy. The brick factory has been planned for several months, but there is no time to start. After all, the Lord can't sift the soil and bake the bricks himself. Everything is created by the officials and the serfs. Completed the task, the reward is the flame mushroom. After the bathhouse was built and opened, the smoke mission was completed and the reward was issued. At the same time, a new mission was updated. Mission: after a year of hard work, even the Lord needs to relax. Enjoy the upcoming festival. Think about next year's development path. Broaden interpersonal contacts, or do nothing. Wait for the end of the festival. Reward: unknown reward. Seeing the latest mission. Liszt didn't know what to say. This is not like a mission at all. The mission requirement is to relax and do nothing. Does the smoke mission feel that I've been too tired this year? Thinking about it, Liszt felt a little ashamed. He had to do a lot of things to make Flower Town look new. However, when it comes to the degree of effort, he is probably the most relaxed of the transmigrators. Apart from sleeping, about 60% of the time is spent enjoying. At least 20% of the time is spent eating and drinking. There are dinners almost every day and luncheons from time to time. Food is the god of the people. Actually, eating and drinking is not too much. Besides, I am an enterprising elite Earth Knight, and I need a lot of food to provide nutrition. He quickly found psychological comfort for his eating and drinking behavior. In less than a year, from a trainee knight to starting to take drugs, my progress is enough to prove the importance of eating and drinking. Eating and drinking is not depravity and corruption. This was a part of the knight's combat aura training. While eating and drinking every day, he did not neglect his practice. He got up early in the morning and began to practice his Do Chi secret book. When he returned to the castle, he began to take the magic potion. He didn't dare to say that he was hardworking, but at least he was diligent. Cultivation was based on the principle of tension and relaxation. It did not mean that one would be able to reap rewards if they trained hard for 24 hours a day. After all, taking potions is the way of a knight's cultivation. This principle was passed on to his sons by the count. Liszt regarded it as a standard. Then, he turned to the other side of the apple tree and asked unhappily, "How many bags of egg rolls have you eaten?" "While I'm thinking, please step away and don't make any noise to interrupt my thoughts. Do you understand, Guard Paris?" Ugh. Paris, whose mouth was full of egg rolls, turned around and walked away silently. The egg roll she ate was a kind of food made of flour, egg mixture, and white sugar mixed into a batter, baked with butter, smeared with butter, and then rolled into a tube. This was not List's idea, but new food independently invented by the bakery owner, Rainer. It was a snack that had just come on the market. The craftsmanship was complicated, the price was not cheap, and it did not sell very well. In order to encourage new inventions, Liszt asked the castle to buy a batch of egg rolls every day, but this snack was good to eat once in a while, and one would get tired of it after eating too much. Therefore, egg rolls were either given to the servants as welfare or to his subordinates at dinner parties. Liszt himself did not eat much. Paris liked to eat egg rolls very much, and a third of the egg rolls she bought went into her stomach. Looking at her figure, it had only been 10 days since she came to the castle, but there were already signs of further weight gain. "I hope I don't become fat. That would affect the visual experience too much." He leaned back in his chair, basking in the rare sun, very comfortable. Now, Paris was a beautiful scenery. She and the castle's maid, Lily, each had their own characteristics. One was a heroic female warrior, the other was a shy and weak maid, but they had one thing in common, that is, they had a slender waist and long legs. Liszt liked this type of figure. However, it was limited to appreciation. Wow, not far away, the thorny sprite, Ella, was teasing Dosen, the intermediate world of Warcraft. This was Ella's bad habit. Over time, Liszt was too lazy to care about it, and Dosen also accepted its fate. Anyway, Ella's thorns could not break its defense, and Ella would naturally give up when it was tired. Patter. The remaining snow on the apple tree fell on the apple table. Liszt stood up directly. "Thomas, prepare the horse and inform the knight that I am going to the mushroom settlement." "Yes, master." He stepped on the Trembling Woods Avenue and said to Paris, who was still eating an egg roll, "There is no combat training today. You go back first. The new year is coming. It is best to go to the North Valley City to buy a suitable leather armor. If you wear it now, people will think that the castle is too poor to pay for a guard." Paris was still wearing a shabby leather armor. She didn't think much of it, but the nobles were very particular about the neatness of their clothes. This is the hypocrisy of the nobles. The bright clothes can't hide the stains in the heart. She complained in a low voice, but did not object to buying new clothes. No woman would resist the charm of new clothes. Liszt shouted at Ella, "Go back to sleep, Ella." Feeling Liszt's irresistible mood, Ella protested twice and flew to the castle. Feeling that the world was quiet, Dosen quickly ran to Liszt, stuck out its tongue, wagged its tail, and made a flattering appearance. It knew that Liszt would go out in this way, and then it would be able to run around. Thomas brought Black Dragon. The knight retainer also rushed over. Liszt mounted his horse and ordered, "Let's go to the Shiitake settlement." The horse's hooves raised the snow on the ground. Instead of taking the main road, they took a shortcut to the mushroom settlement. 50 acres of mushroom greenhouses and 50 acres of mixed mushroom and flame mushroom greenhouses. Although the mushroom settlement had little arable land, its income was very high. Food like mushrooms was an essential item on the table. The expanded flame mushrooms were continuously made into magic potions to supply List's life. Therefore, he attached great importance to the mushroom settlement, second only to the Garden of Thorns. At this time, in the mushroom settlement, the serfs were busy inspecting their greenhouses. Just yesterday, the Sir Lord came to inspect and then ordered the serfs to check the hidden dangers in the greenhouses and pay attention to the various problems arising from the cultivation of flame mushrooms. Did you find any problems? After List arrived, he directly asked the mushroom settlement's manager. He came to check the mixed mushroom and flame mushroom greenhouses yesterday and did not find the cold flame mushroom rewarded by the smoke task. Chapter 231. Hearing the steward's complaint. Crooked Neck Bob, who was waiting on the side, suddenly knelt on the ground and wept bitterly. Sir Lord, Bob didn't mean it. There was a strong wind that night, and the door of my shed was blown open. Sir Lord, please forgive me. Bob will never let the wind blow open the door again. Looking at Bob's sorrowful performance, List had an impression of this person. Back then, the flame mushrooms grew in his shed, and he thought that there was a problem and shoveled a lot of them. List still remembered that because Bob couldn't make the flame mushroom ingredients, he only rewarded him with 10 silver coins, and more rewards were given to Nash, who researched the ingredients. This Crooked Neck Bob is fated with the flame mushrooms. List thought about it and did not punish him for the time being. Instead, he brought people in his flame mushroom shed. As far as the eye could see, the flame mushrooms inside had withered, far less than other flame mushroom sheds. The loss was not big, but it was not small either. Crooked Neck Bob, who was kneeling on the ground, hurriedly ran in. Seeing that List was constantly observing every flame mushroom ingredient, he continued to cry bitterly. Sir Lord, although many flame mushrooms died, but some flame mushrooms survived. Even if he didn't say it, List could see it. On the few flame mushroom ingredients, there were still a lot of sparsely growing flame mushrooms. List already had a vague guess in his mind, so he went closer to observe. He found that the remaining flame mushrooms were very different from normal flame mushrooms. That was, the color of the flame mushrooms was no longer bright red, but had faded into a dark red. But after he cast magic eyes, he found that the dark red flame mushrooms had signs of magic power, far more than normal flame mushrooms, almost turning into a dazzling red light. In other words, this flame mushroom looked cold on the outside, leading to its poor appearance, but the fire magic inside was more vigorous. The cold-loving flame mushroom refers to this kind of flame mushroom. List was delighted. The reward of the smoke mission was right in front of him. The cold-loving nature explains the nature of the flame mushroom. It is not afraid of the cold wind and snow, and because of some mutation, it can condense more fire attribute magic. This was undoubtedly a high-quality flame mushroom that far surpassed the normal flame mushroom and could be used to create a higher-quality magic potion. He immediately ordered, "Whip Crooked Neck Bob 10 times as a warning. If he's careless again in the future and causes damage to the flame mushroom, it won't just be 10 lashes." When his crooked neck was whipped 10 times, his buttocks blossomed. List then had Thomas hand over 10 silver coins to the other party. A blessing in disguise, Crooked Neck Bob. Although your family's flame mushroom was severely damaged, it also mutated into a new type of flame mushroom. I named it the snow flame mushroom. These 10 silver coins are your reward. With snot and tears running down his face, Bob immediately ignored the pain in his butt and reached out to take the silver coin. "Ah, thank you, Sir Lord. Praise the great Sir Lord." List immediately issued a new order. Whoever finds the right ingredients for the icy flame mushroom will be rewarded with a gold coin. Just like the ingredients for the flame mushroom, a gold coin was enough to set off the ambitions of all serfs. After he left, as expected, the Shiitake settlement was boiling. Countless serfs rubbed their fists, ready to go all out. Especially Nash, who had received a gold coin as a reward. With this gold coin, the old bachelor not only married a wife, but also built 2 new flame mushroom greenhouses and became a big farmer in the Shiitake settlement. After hearing the reward from the Sir Lord, he announced loudly to the people around him, "If I can find the ingredients for the flame mushroom, I can also find the ingredients for the icy flame mushroom. This now the old Nash will take it." That's not necessarily true. Yes, you were lucky to get the reward from the Sir Lord. This time it's my turn. Old Nash, you'd better concentrate on dealing with your little wife. Don't let her make a cuckold of you. You still have to look at me to research the ingredients. Bob, whose neck was crooked from the whipping, wasn't willing to be outdone. I lost to old Nash last time, but I definitely won't do it again. The flame mushrooms were grown in my shed, and the ice flame mushrooms were also grown in my shed. Now this reward should belong to me. Damn that old Nash. In the afternoon, in the castle's study, Zambrata rubbed his toes a little awkwardly. Then he took a deep breath and tried to relax himself. This study is as warm as spring, but there is no burning charcoal. Sir Baron, Flower Town is full of surprises, and your castle is full of surprises. Behind the desk, List leisurely held a cup of milk tea and asked with a smile, "So, Mr. Zambrata, can you guess why the study is warm?" "I guess it's magic," Zambrata replied solemnly. He learned from Gort that List valued his encyclopedic knowledge. He knew that today's meeting was a test. If he couldn't show enough to impress the other party, this trip would be in vain. In order to recover, in order to live, he must be careful. And I guess this kind of magic is also in public bathrooms. It's probably a kind of fire magic that heats the water and the temperature in the room. This kind of method is incredible. I've only heard of wizards in the palace who can do it. Well, List didn't deny it and continued to ask, "Have you been to many countries?" "Yes, I have been to the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and 7 vassal states." When I was young, I liked to travel around the continent, but due to limited financial resources, I only traveled around the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. I heard that there is an evil dragon in the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. Do you know? Oh, it's a light dragon that has lived in the Red Maple Mountain for 100 years. During this period, many warriors wanted to kill it and get the title of Dragon Slayer alongside the Dragon Knight. But you know, the power of the dragon is endless, and most of the warriors eventually become dragon dung. Is the light dragon difficult to deal with? It is said that the Grand Duke of Maple Leaf is the Dragon Knight. Why not kill this evil dragon? The dragon of the Grand Duke of Maple Leaf is just an iron dragon. He can't even find the hiding place of the light dragon. There is no hope of killing the light dragon. In fact, there are many evil dragons on the continent, but most of them are elemental dragons, which are more powerful than metal dragons and gem dragons. Basically, gem dragons and metal dragons are production units, while elemental dragons are combat units. Can you tell me about the customs of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and its vassal states? List said gently. He did feel that Zambrata had a wealth of knowledge. Zambrata got up and bowed slightly. "As you wish, Lord Baron, that you're tuning in to the Eternal Immortal Ballad YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.